Welcome to tonight's virtual meeting of the Port Phillip City Council. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the Yalukit Willem clan of the Boonatung. We pay our respects to their owners, and both past and present, and we acknowledge and uphold their continuing relationship to this land. Tonight's meeting is being held via the Webex platform and streamed via Council's webcast page and Facebook Live. Whilst we have planned for this online meeting, there always remains the risk of technical issues arising that are beyond our control. If we experience technical difficulties tonight, we will adjourn the meeting for a short time to resolve the issue. If the issue cannot be resolved and the meeting cannot continue, then we'll adjourn to tomorrow evening, and the details will be circulated to the public as early as possible. Meeting processes have been altered via resolution of the Council to hear all submissions from the members of the public at the start of the meeting. Additionally, voting on all motions will be under division, and where the Chair will call upon councillors individually in rotating alphabetical order to state their vote. Okay, first up on the agenda is apologies. Councillors, do we have any apologies? I note all councillors are here tonight, but I also wanted to say that our CEO, Peter Smith, is an apology as he's on leave today, and I welcome acting CEO, Chris Carroll. Welcome, Chris. So we'll go to item 2 of the agenda, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. And councillors, the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 15th of July 2020 have been circulated. Are there any questions regarding these minutes? Okay, I can't see any. So just a reminder, councillors, about chat, and if you could please put it to the host and the presenter. No questions on the minutes? If so, can I please have a motion to confirm these minutes? So we have Councillor Copsey to move. Do I have a seconder? I will second. I'll now put that motion under division and call upon each councillor for your vote. Councillor Baxter.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Brand.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford.
For.
Councillor Gross.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Simic.
For.
Councillor Voss. For. That motion is unanimously carried. Can I also remind you, councillors, to put your mic on mute, because there is a lot of background going on with papers being shuffled. Thank you very much. Item 3, which is declarations of conflicts of interest. Does anyone have a conflict in any matter that's being discussed tonight? Okay, I note there are none. Just one moment. Right, so now we'll go to item 4, public question time and submissions. So we'll now hear all public questions and comments on report items from members of the public. All requests to speak were required to be submitted by 4 p.m. this afternoon. At the time of registering to speak, submitters were given the option to join the Webex meeting virtually and ask their questions live during the meeting, or have an officer read their statement on their behalf. Statements submitted by members of the public will be read in summary by an officer. Under meeting procedure local law, the chair may limit the speaking time for a particular item to 2 minutes in the event that there are 5 or more speakers. As there are 27 submissions to item 14.4, the Council Plan and Budget 2021, hearing of submissions, I'll be enforcing the 2-minute speaking time on this item. So I encourage everyone to get to their point rather swiftly. Thank you. So first up, I'm going to call upon Terence Glenane. He's speaking to item 7.1, Petition Response, Kilda Peanut Farm Pavilion and Oval Lighting by the Dog Owners Group of St Kilda. Welcome, Terence.
Thank you. On behalf of the Dog Owners Group of St Kilda, I'd like to thank all councillors for unanimously accepting the Dog Owners Group petition requesting access to Peanut Farm Oval Lighting. Because of the time restraints, I'm giving a much reduced version of a letter sent to council today. The Dog Owners Group of St Kilda accepts most of the officers' recommendations, especially item 6, which is the crux of the petition. But item 2 and 7 have raised some new issues that affect all officers' recommendations in this matter. This has caused great concern for many in the community. The recommendations in 2 and 7 are built on incorrect information from unstated sources. If these recommendations are accepted by council, it will be a huge retrograde step in the present conditions for dog walkers now enjoying the peanut farm. Officers' recommendations 1, 3, 4, 5 and 6 are fully supported. Officers' recommendation 2 is partially supported, subject to clarifications. Officers' recommendation 7, stating the ground traditionally is only available on Monday nights for a non-sporting activity, is unsupported and rejected by the Dog Owners Group of St Kilda. The facts stated in this recommendation are challenged. During the 5 years I've exercised my dog on the peanut farm, I and other dog owners of the group have seldom seen the oval used by sporting clubs more than 2 days during the week and never have seen 4 days during the week being used. The officer states the peanut farm is heavily utilised by sport clubs in winter months for training and all weekend for competition. I don't know where the council obtained this information to base this statement. I suspect it was obtained from blanket bookings rather than actual use. I have been going to the peanut farm for years and with confirmation other members have rarely seen the oval used by sporting clubs more than 2 days during the week. Weekends are heavily used for matches and used by dog walkers after matches. Some weekends the oval is not used at all by sporting clubs when teams play away. As stated in the Dog Owners Group petition, the group is by far the biggest user of the oval. Total man hours of Dog Owners Group members using the oval per year, not including other dog walkers, far exceed the man hours spent on the peanut farm per year than all sporting clubs using the oval combined. The statement the oval is used by sporting clubs every day during winter is absurd. It is simply not true. Dog walkers spend more time on the oval during these times than stated by the sporting clubs. Most often, sport club training is a small group of participants, not match training, but being coached. These small groups occupy 1/4 of the oval space and have coexisted safely with the dog walkers group. Allowing dog walkers and other non-sporting users to use the oval Monday nights as recommended would be a drastic retrograde step and change the status quo for dog walkers using the oval most nights of the week. The oval
We've come to the end, Mr. Glenane.
Very good. Officers should monitor rules. The local residents and other community members will strongly resist this situation. Officers should monitor the rural use of the oval and determine its utilisation. The last thing we want is the oval not being used for no practical or functional reason. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Glenane. Now I'd like to call upon Mr. David Wingate. He's speaking to item 7.1 as well, the petition response requesting access to the St Kilda Peanut Farm Pavilion and Oval Lighting. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you very much. It's David Wingate here, St Kilda local for over 8 years. And as part of the St Kilda Dog Owners Group, I'd just like to thank all councillors for approving last round our access to the lighting for the pavilion. So we would just like to say the 400 odd people in the group would greatly appreciate an approval of the application as per documented for immediate access, so using the key now for lighting, whilst the recommendation of automation happens when it happens for that lighting, and that will help us through this COVID period for use of the grounds and safe conduct for all members. To support Terry's comments, just in regard to item 2, co-usage, the status quo is that we have a quite good working relationship with the other sports clubs for a co-usage utilisation of the ground. And point 7 is really it's a different topic to what was actually submitted for, which was the access to the lighting for the safe conduct of our group. But we are very appreciative of the support for our access to the lighting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wingate. Now I'd like to call upon Emily Fox. Emily is also speaking to 7.1, the petition response, request to access St Kilda Peanut Farm Pavilion and oval lighting by the dog owners group of St Kilda. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you very much for having me. So I'm Emily Fox, pronouns she, her. I am a player, coach and committee member at the St Kilda Sharks Women's Football Club. I'll just defer to my prepared notes that I submitted to Council today. So the St Kilda Sharks are comfortable with the accommodation of the dog owners group of St Kilda at Peanut Farm Reserve, dependent on the following conditions. The St Kilda Sharks' access to the ground and facilities during our allocated times of use are not impacted at all by the Dog Walkers Association presence at Peanut Farm Reserve. Currently, our allocated hours are 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Wednesdays and Fridays, as well as the required amount of time we need for game days. We expect the City of Port Phillip must undertake regular assessment and repairs to the Peanut Farm playing surface due to damage by dogs to the oval, in particular holes dug by dogs that have resulted in injury to our playing group. All dog owners must be responsible for collecting any sticks, branches and dog faeces from the surface immediately, as such items create unacceptable health and safety risks to our playing group. Currently, we feel that the amount of dog faeces and green waste left on the oval prior to our training sessions and games is of concern and needs to be addressed. City of Port Phillip to provide improved waste disposal facilities, access to dog waste disposal bags and increased signage outlining expectations of responsibility to dog owners. And also for the dog owners group of St Kilda as an organisation needs to accept responsibility for any injury caused to our members and playing group as a result of the actions of their dogs. This includes direct injury such as dog bites, with one player suffering puncture wounds and lacerations to the left hand after a dog attacked a football they were holding in March of last year, and also indirect injury due to holes, sticks and branches left on the ground. The health and safety of our members and playing group is of the utmost importance to St Kilda Sharks, and as a long-term co-tenant of the ground, our concerns will always be centred on maintaining as safe an environment as possible. Thanks.
Oh, Madam Mayor, I believe you're on mute.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll call upon Brenda Forbath speaking to item 9.1, Children's Services Policy Implementation, Report on Public Interest regarding Council-operated services. Welcome, Brenda. Hello?
Can't hear you.
Please
Can you
speak.
hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
If you can hear me, that's the most important thing. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Community Alliance of Port Phillip. My name is Brenda Forbath and I live in Elwood. I'm speaking in relation to item 9.1, which is the Children's Services Policy Implementation Report on the Public Interest regarding Council-operated services. Community Alliance of Port Phillip supports the finding that it is in the public interest for Council to continue operating early education and care services at its 4 childcare centres. Families and educators at these centres will be relieved to have this matter resolved, and we thank the Council officers very much for all their work on this important issue and strongly urge the councillors to support the recommendation. However, we ask that Council consider some changes to the wording at paragraph 3.2. It is our view that an annual review should be focused on whether these centres are continuing to provide for vulnerable children, and that Council's investment in this essential service is being efficiently managed, not a focus on minimising Council's direct financial input. And given that Council intends to continue to provide for and focus on the needs of vulnerable families and their children through providing high quality early education and care, it will be important not to put this goal at risk in the future by focusing on minimising Council financial input. So we therefore respectfully propose a revised wording of paragraph 3.2, which reads, and I quote, "Note that this finding will be reviewed annually to ensure that the ongoing operation of Council-provided early education and care services continues to provide places for children whose families are experiencing factors associated with vulnerability, that Council's financial investment in its own centres is efficiently managed, and that childcare service delivery, and that includes Council-provided services, community-managed services and privately operated services, continues to work effectively in the City of Port Phillip." Thank you for that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms Forbath. I'd like to call upon Suzanne Provis, also speaking to item 9.1, the Children's Services Policy Implementation, a report on public interest regarding council-operated services. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you, Bernadine. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, it looks like I'm muted, but that's fine. I'm speaking to item 9.1, Children's Services Policy Implementation. I'm a resident in the City of Port Phillip with a sort of a lifetime commitment to early childhood education and care services. I'm speaking as an individual. I live in St Kilda. Early childhood education and care services are essential for the economy and are crucial to improving children's life chances. I am proud that this municipality where I live is about to commit to ensuring that residents will continue to have access to public as well as community, not-for-profit and for-profit managed services. I congratulate Council on the thorough public interest test, which led to the logical conclusion that the City of Port Phillip continue to operate early childhood education and care services. It recognises the crucial role that local government can play in the provision of services for families and children. In addition to influencing through policy, being a service provider gives Council the means to deliver Every Child Our Future objectives, to make a direct and real difference to people's lives. It also requires Council to be informed about state and federal government policy that affects families with young children in the municipality, and thus be better able to advocate for and plan to meet families and children's needs. Being required to implement policy will better enable Council to interpret policy and identify potential consequences and share these with other service providers in the municipality and support them to meet family and children's needs. Being a service provider makes it easier for Council to support a thriving early childhood education and care sector in the municipality. However, I find it hard to understand the rationale for recommendation 3.2, that the finding will be reviewed annually at a minimum. Surely the City of Port Phillip has more effective mechanisms to ensure efficient operational services that meet family and community needs and interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Provis. Next on the list is Ms Rhonda Small, speaking again on item 9.1, Children's Services Policy Implementation, Report on Public Interest regarding Council's operated services. Welcome, Rhonda.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. My name is Rhonda Small and I live in St Kilda. I need to say that I am a member of 3 local groups interested in this issue, the Save Childcare in Port Phillip group, the Community Alliance of Port Phillip and the newly formed community campaign Progressive Port Phillip. But I speak tonight also as a parent and a grandparent with family involvement in council childcare over many years, in order to welcome the recommendation before you tonight that council continue to operate and manage its 4 childcare centres because it is in the public interest to do so. I urge you to support the recommendation. It has been a long and challenging process arriving at this point, but I want to say that especially in these tough times, the public not-for-profit provision of childcare is critical to our sense of a community that cares for each other and for those among us who are least advantaged. The report before you should cast aside any doubts you may have had that our council-run centres are indeed providing care for vulnerable children in our community within a universal care model. The addition of an outreach officer, as is proposed in the draft budget, is also welcome, as this role will be focused on reaching and connecting vulnerable families with early years education and care services to improve access to an integrated model of service provision. This starts from the time a newborn infant and their family are embraced by our universal maternal and child health service, and includes additional support through the enhanced MCH service for families with additional needs or vulnerabilities. What I hope is that tonight's vote will demonstrate Council's commitment to ongoing investment in early childhood education and care, both through its own direct service provision and through the support it provides to our community-managed childcare services. This is what the community wants, and I hope you can all feel proud as councillors when that is what you deliver for us. Finally, as has been mentioned in a couple of the previous speakers, the wording at 3.2 is really a little confusing. So I'd just like to ask first, is the recommendation to review the public interest test finding annually at a minimum intended to provide council with the capacity to adjust its investment in childcare provision, either up or down, as deemed necessary in order to continue to meet the public interest test? And second, if this is the case, and as efficient management of all service provision requires ongoing monitoring of council's investment, surely aiming to minimise the council subsidy unnecessarily restricts council decision making. Thanks again for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ms Small. Now I'd call upon Graham Lockwood. He's speaking to item 14.4, Council Plan and Budget 2020 to 21, hearing of submissions. Welcome, Mr Lockwood.
Thank you, my Mayor, and thank you for your time. I've been a resident of the City of Port Phillip for 33 years, and I've made a submission, and I assume all members of the committee of the council have read that submission. Is that correct?
That's correct.
In that case, I'll just briefly mention there has been at least 6 other submissions, have your say submissions, that is, for inclusion of $22,000 in the budget for 2021 to complete the Garden of Remembrance, which brief was signed off by the Commemoration Committee in 2018. Funds were not provided that year to complete the garden, nor again in 2019 or 2020. And it's requested that it be reviewed for submission in the budget this year. And if that is not possible, perhaps can it be prioritised for funding for any underspend on other capital works during the year? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr Lockwood, and also congratulations on your very special award that you've recently received.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'll call upon Georgina Solides, who is speaking on behalf on item 14.4, the Council Plan and Budget 2020-21, hearing of submissions. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of the Multicultural Advisory Committee, and I'd like to say from the outset that currently there's very little expenditure dedicated to multicultural issues, and the amount drawn on by these communities through mainstream funding is very small. In line with our charter as an advisory committee, MAC would like to be one of the groups which the council needs to consult regarding priorities for the next 4 years. In the current budget document, no reference is made to this committee on page 55. We seek assurances that staff who currently support the work of our committee and support members of ethnic communities, including for purposes of applying for various grants, will continue to provide this support. MAC seeks confirmation that any rearrangement of the grant schemes will not have a deleterious impact on the capacity for ethnic minority communities to apply for and receive funding for their community activities. We welcome a review of the proposed cuts to assist counter services in Port Melbourne and South Melbourne. Both these areas have large percentages of minority residents, many of whom are older, have limited English language skills and access to technology. We seek assurance that library resources available in languages other than English will not be affected by the proposed cuts to library funding. We are concerned that cuts to the Youth Leadership and Engagement program may have a disproportionate impact on minority groups within our community with limited access to support and opportunity. We seek information on the cultural, linguistic and religious backgrounds and length of residence in Australia of those who are supported through this program. We may need to consider engaging particularly marginalised young people in the future when the program resumes. We also seek further information regarding which groups of children are most likely to be disengaged from early education and whether any decision to suspend this partnership will have a disproportionate impact on migrant children. And in this context, seek clarification regarding how this change sits with the City of Port Phillip policy, which emphasises reaching vulnerable children. And we have similar concerns about star health and the possibility that migrant children will be disproportionately affected. And just one last point, I think at this point in time when we can save lives through communication, we'd also recommend a coherent and strategic communications policy that brings us into contact with our diverse community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Talides. Now I'll call upon Kate Kelly, speaking to item 14.4, Council Plan and Budget 2020-21, hearing of submissions. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here to represent the many hundreds of participants at Southport Community Centre that operates to support hundreds of vulnerable and isolated community members every week. I am not only representing them, but I'm also, as someone who's worked in crisis services for over 20 years in Port Phillip, and I'm very concerned about the impact of COVID-19 and the impact on mental health of our most vulnerable communities. We're really passionate about supporting those communities at Southport Community Centre, and we wanted to thank the Council for continuing to resource us and allow us to support those vulnerable communities during this most challenging time. Since the end of March, since the beginning of the COVID-19 shutdown, we have delivered close to 3,000 participant contacts, over 1,500 individual case management contacts and supports to vulnerable residents of Port Melbourne and South Melbourne and other areas of Port Phillip, and over 130 workshops and activities in that 12-week period. And all of these programs have been supported by Council. We wanted to say that without your support, we wouldn't be able to continue to support these communities. We're very grateful for that. We're very glad that you can continue to support programs like Port Phillip Welcomers that allows us to pivot and support communities in isolation, and programs such as Get Out of Town that supports vulnerable and isolated families, and our many health and wellbeing programs that support hundreds of participants each week. We will continue to offer these programs with your support. We're very much looking forward to eventually going back to opening up our programs to the community as we go into a recovery period, if and when that occurs. And we really do think that we would be in a position to continue to support those communities as we face the challenges we will face in recovery. And sorry, I'm distracted by that noise. I don't know what that is.
It's time. It means you've had your 2 minutes.
Thank you very much for your support.
So you can finish, but thank you very much, Kate. I appreciate that. So now call upon Clive Bowden, please, also speaking to 14.4 Council Plan and Budget, hearing of submissions. Welcome, Clive.
Madam Mayor, Clive Bowden has not arrived online at this time and we haven't received a statement. So we will let you know if he does arrive, but I ask you to move to the next speaker.
Absolutely, we can do that. So Jane Metalikovic, apologise if I got that wrong. On behalf of Upstride Agency, she's speaking to item 14.4 Council Plan and Budget, hearing of submissions. Welcome, Jane.
Thank you, Bernadine. Thank you, Council. So I'm Jane from Upstride Agency, which is a Port Phillip's comms agency based in South Melbourne. I also live with my family in Fitzroy Street in St Kilda, and I'm joined here by Jenna from Andiamo Projects. Together we have a vast amount of government, community and big event experience. We have submitted a proposal in regards to the budget line item for mechanisms that support and promote businesses within the city and encourage visitation, particularly through September and December 2020. Our proposal is for a community Christmas tree festival to help Port Phillip business and tourism thrive in a very different festive season. So our festival proposal is for a 4-week event activation leading into this Christmas, running for 5 hours from Thursday to Sunday each of those weeks. It involves setting up 100 Christmas trees in a particular local location. These Christmas trees will be decorated by 100 selected local businesses in creative ways by the business, for example, a local plumbing business using taps and pipes, or a local cafe using cups. So visitors will be asked to pay a $2 donation upon entry and vote on their favourite Christmas tree as they leave. Proceeds will be paid to the participating businesses pro rata according to votes. So we would run this via an EOI open to Port Phillip businesses to decorate a Christmas tree. There would be 100 opportunities available to businesses from right across the municipality. The on-site business branding would be an exposure opportunity to the visitors, along with the potential to expand this out across council platforms for advertising. So there would be a financial benefit, obviously, for the participating businesses because they would receive money for the Christmas trees that people are voting for their Christmas tree. And there would also foster morale around Christmas time, particularly when a lot of the Port Phillip residents are from the UK and other international locations unable to return home. Our rules would be, it would be strictly inclusive and agnostic, with businesses involved instructed that religious messages or decorations can't be displayed. I'll hand over to my colleague Jenna to talk about COVID considerations.
In regards to COVID and safety measures, we're obviously extremely conscious during the event follows very strict COVID safe procedures. Safety is our number one priority in everything that we do, and we're confident this event can be run really safely. In terms of a quick rundown of procedures, I won't go into too much detail as it's all in our proposal, but we're confident we can restrict venue capacity, we can restrict the space between each of the groups that are moving around the venue, and we'll have a very slow one-way foot traffic in the space, so it would be very easy for us to manage that distancing. In terms of budget, the cost for this type of event is $66,950 excluding GST. Does not include the cost of the venue hire and associated costs. And we do have options to scale that cost down as listed in the proposal. In terms of environmental considerations, it's also top of mind. We would purchase 100 real Christmas trees in line with environmental best practice, and we would purchase that from a nearby Melbourne tree farm, which would also be chipped upon return and returned back to the land. In terms of a case study, there's many of these activations around Australia that work really well in a population within communities and local businesses, and particularly at this COVID time, we know that fostering morale in a very safe way would be really well received. We're looking forward to creating an end-to-end festival with you. We can arrange all of the associated processes and logistics. We look forward to working with you to bring it to life. So thank you for Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jenna, and thank you, Jane. Now, I call upon Simon Strickland. He's speaking to item 14.4, Council Plan and Budget 2021, hearing of submissions. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you, my Mayor, and good evening, councillors. I'm now the president of the Albert Park Bowling Club, and it will come as no surprise to any of you that I'm talking about the renovation or the potential renovation of our club. Before I do that, though, I would like to acknowledge the council officers' assistance during the installation of our new green last year. They were very helpful in squeezing us through the planning permit process and liaising with Heritage Victoria as we went through that process. You've heard this story before. You've been to the club, many of you. Essentially, the club is old and some of the facilities are substandard. We have 50% of our members, almost 50% of our members are female. We don't have a very good change room for them. In fact, their change room is shared with some of the male members, which is substandard. And that was included as a major part of the budget that you guys were supposed to fund. We were surprised, therefore, on the 6th of July to receive a notice from David Ngargee telling us that you'd taken it from the budget and it was going in as a proposal in this session. So I'm here to urge you to reconsider the inclusion of that money in the budget for our renovation. We've been working on this for 5 years now, and it's a long time to have a conversation with the council around this, and it's kind of interesting. If the council is not able to fund it in the near term, we would still seek your support with planning, permit and approvals as we move forward, and we'll try and arrange for some funding to make that happen. And also, you may be aware that our lease is coming up for renewal. In light of the very substantial sums of money that are involved in both the green renewal and the potential clubhouse extension, we will be looking for the longest term we can possibly get for that lease, in order to provide a certainty of use of the facilities that we're going to invest in. That's about all I have to say.
Right on time. Thank you very much, Mr. Strickland.
Thank you.
I'd like to call upon Marianne Noon, speaking to item 14.4 as well, Council Plan and Budget 2020-21, hearing of submissions.
Thank you, Mayor. I've lived in South Melbourne for 40 years, and tonight I speak as chairperson of the Southport Community Housing Group. In our submission, number 290, we strongly support the Council's leadership role in advocating for increased social housing in the municipality. However, tonight I wish to highlight three concerning aspects of the updated council plan and draft budget, in particular relating to 1, Council's In Our Backyard policy, 2, Council's proposal to establish a common ground project, and 3, Council's resolution of the 6th of March 2019. As you know, Southport Community Housing Group operates exclusively in the City of Port Phillip, managing some 283 tenancies. We have a long and successful association working with the City of Port Phillip. We've assisted in the development of various council housing strategies, including the In Our Backyard Growing Affordable Housing in Port Phillip 2015-2025 strategy, which remains listed as a priority in the updated council plan. However, we're disappointed that 5 years on, the strategy has not delivered one additional unit of social housing in the City of Port Phillip. More disappointingly, there is no discussion in this year's draft budget of how the related budget allocation is to be spent in order to facilitate the implementation of the In Our Backyard strategy. There's no mention of the promised packaging of council properties with supporting cash contributions that were meant to assist local community housing organisations to leverage finance for the delivery of new projects, nor any mention of the expression of interest process that was to give preference to the 3 local registered community housing organisations. We submit that Council should implement and fund the actions contained in Policy 1 of the In Our Backyard strategy. A related matter is the proposed establishment of temporary and permanent common ground facilities which appear as new initiatives in the Council's draft plan and proposed budget. From our participation in the Council's In Our Backyard Action Plan Community Forum, we became aware of Council's plans to dispose of some Council sites identified in the Our Backyard pipeline and to consolidate these funds to acquire a larger site suitable for the Common Ground initiative. However, there's been no consultation about that process. We are unclear why Council has chosen a Common Ground model. While we support Council taking an active interest in local homelessness, the plan and budget documents provide no clear justification or rationale for Council to spend significant funds on Common Ground initiatives instead of supporting local housing agencies. We assert that the desired outcomes from the Common Ground approach could equally, and we think even better, be provided via a dispersed model with scattered housing and support and health services in particular localities. We believe there are advantages in the model in a single housing residential building. We submit the Council in the spirit of In Our Backyard strategy, explore with local councils, local housing organisations, more appropriate ways to manage and provide these services. And finally, we call on Council to honour its commitment made in the motion passed on the 6th of March 2019 to provide grants to any registered housing agency applying to build and operate social housing in Port Phillip. Southport has received a funding from the state government, and this funding, this promised council funding, would ensure that these units are sustainable and enable Southport to be competitive for future funding. So we summarise by saying we call on Council to implement its commitments in the In Our Backyard strategy, to honour its motion of March 2019 and to undertake consultation, including with local housing organisations, health and welfare services, about the most appropriate response to homelessness in the municipality. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for your submission, Ms Noon. A call upon Jeffrey Love, please, speaking to item 14.4, Council Plan and Budget 2020, hearing of submissions. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Jeffrey Love. I'm in St Kilda, and I thank Council, you, Mayor, the councillors and officers for this opportunity to address you tonight. I'm speaking for the Elsternwick Park Association, and I want to thank Council for supporting the Bayside Council's master plan for the Elsternwick Park North Nature Reserve and its many benefits to the City of Port Phillip. Benefits of this cooperation between Bayside and Port Phillip councils include provision of habitat for native flora and fauna, reduced nitrogen and pollutant load into the bay, improving habitat for marine life, including human bay users, self-included, water harvesting and the cost savings from using less potable water, flood mitigation to the residents of Elwood, and connecting residents to nature with its recreational and mental health benefits. This is a remarkable project and a beacon for a better and more sustainable future. So, once again, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr Love. I'd now call upon David McGowan. He's speaking to item 14.4, Council Plan and Budget, hearing of submissions. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors. I'm a resident of Gateway Ward. My full submission can be found on pages 260 to 262 in Attachment 2, Part 2, the majority of which is summarised in Attachment 1. However, I wanted to read to you the last two paragraphs which are not included in the summary. Clearly, the present health crisis has significantly impacted the Council's financial position, and endeavours have been made to rearrange spending in 2020 and 2021. My main concern with the 10-year plan is its complexity, driven by an increasing number of projects which each result in additional operational costs, and all of this started from 5 broad strategic directions. In my view, it is time to cut off some of the branches of the strategic tree and by so doing eliminate a number of projects, simplify the organisation structure and reduce the cost base. Only essential projects should remain and be focused on maximum community benefit. I applaud the Council for being bold in its vision and setting long-term strategic directions, but these must be tempered by financial realities. As stated in the Council papers, a business as usual approach will not be sufficient. In my view, deferment rather than removal of projects will not suffice. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr McGowan. I call upon Anne Byrne, speaking on behalf to item 14.4, Council Plan and Budget, hearing of submissions. Welcome, Anne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I speak on behalf of the Community Alliance of Port Phillip on our budget submission. I live in St Kilda. So the Community Alliance of Port Phillip is concerned by Council's austerity response to the revenue hit during the extraordinary circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic. The approach taken has been to balance the books via a range of service cuts, organisational restructuring, paying off already low debt and deferral of major projects and other projects. We do not believe that this is in the community's best interests. Rather than defer major projects, Council would do well to support expenditure on them in 2021. CAP requests that Council revisit the decision not to borrow in 2021 and develop a plan supported by prudent borrowings to bring forward major projects currently proposed for deferral. In addition, we request that Council contribute to post-pandemic economic recovery by investing in a 12-month job creation program to employ local residents who have lost jobs and income due to the pandemic. CAP welcomes the Economic and Social Recovery Program and supports the strategies to ameliorate the effects of the pandemic on local businesses. We recommend that Council review its allocation of funds for emerging social issues at the first quarterly review, with a view to expanding that allocation. It's important that Council be transparent on all the costs within the Economic and Social Recovery Program and provide guidance on how the community can monitor the success or otherwise of these programs. The arts, music and creative industries are very important to our city and have been hard hit by the COVID restrictions. With the importance of the arts to our local economy, it would be appropriate that any further savings from the arts budget, including from the St Kilda Festival, which is in our view is unlikely to go ahead, be reallocated to activities in this sector, particularly to local activities. CAP supports the Council. The Council supports a statement in the Council plan on the successful partnership with Housing First. We recommend the existing social housing fund be increased to provide for the added initiatives aimed at homelessness, that Council honour its commitment to provide grants to any registered housing agency applying to build and operate social housing in Port Phillip, that Council in conjunction with Housing First allocate funds from the Social Housing Fund to refurbish Port Phillip Housing Trust properties, to improve standards in older properties and to expand, where possible, the number of units. CAP sees addressing climate change as integral to ensuring an equitable, inclusive and sustainable city. The 2020 Local Government Act shifts the balance of Council responsibilities to achieve the best outcomes for the community, including future generations, as well as the economic, social and environment sustainability of the city. CAP recommends that Council consider the projects listed in our submission, particularly to continue to support and advocate for the rebuilding of the Eco Centre. CAP recognises that the Council will soon consider the Library Action Plan, which outlines how important libraries are to all communities. We request that Council does not decrease the library purchases by $200,000 in this year. We understand that these are difficult times and encourage Council to be bold and innovative in its decision making to the benefit of all in our community. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms Byrne. Now I'd like to call upon Janet Rosenberg, speaking to item 14.4, Council Plan and Budget, Hearing of Submissions. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, councillors. I'm Janet Rosenberg, President of the Ackland Street Village Business Association. I am here to appeal directly to you for more support for small business than is proposed in the current draft budget. I am asking for help for our businesses in two ways: financially and in the setting up of a business advisory group that can liaise with Council directly. As you are aware, traders in St Kilda have been suffering for some time, and now with COVID-19 are being absolutely devastated by this new wave of lockdowns and mounting debts. We need urgent help for our struggling businesses to stay afloat and then to revive. We are requesting financial help in the following three areas. Firstly, rate relief. At a minimum, a 25% reduction of rates payable by businesses in the winter quarter to acknowledge their financial hardship. It could be set up as a grant perhaps, and therefore targeted to the businesses that can show financial hardship through qualifying for JobKeeper or a similar test. Number two, the removal of parking fees for at least 6 months to allow easy access to our streets. And number three, a continuation of the freeze on footpath trading permits until next year, and an expansion of the areas used for outside dining to allow social distancing restrictions at no extra cost. We are also asking Council for help in providing an easier pathway to liaise with Council. Firstly, through a dedicated COP precinct contact or representative responsible for Ackland Street, the same as Fitzroy Street traders have now. Lastly, I am asking for the setting up of a business advisory group that comprises representatives from all the traders groups that have a special rate, such as Port Melbourne, Fitzroy Street and Ackland Street, and to also include representatives from the traders of the wider municipality, for example from Balaclava, Elwood, South Melbourne, Middle Park and Albert Park, and of course with representatives from Council. Such a group could then suggest initiatives that will be of benefit to everyone. Initiatives that the business advisory group could work on may include shop local campaigns, social media marketing, digitalisation assistance, or even infrastructure suggestions. We have some businesses without any online presence at all, and they need support to move to online engagement, a now necessary massive shift because of COVID-19. Such a group could provide a more cohesive and municipality-wide outlook. I am urging you to consider these proposals for inclusion in the budget. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your submission, Ms Rosenberg. I call upon Aidan McGartland, also speaking to item 14.4, Council Plan and Budget, Hearing of Submissions. Welcome, Aidan.
Thank you, Bernadine. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Hello, I'm Aidan McGartland. I'm a lifelong resident of Port Phillip, and tonight I will be speaking briefly about a proposal for the Cantani Gardens to have a stormwater harvesting project. And I speak on behalf of SQUAT, a newly formed community group in St Kilda that stands for St Kilda Water and Trees. So, SQUAT proposes the Cantani Gardens Stormwater Harvesting Project as part of Port Phillip's wider water-sensitive urban design program. The project would involve collecting water from drains underneath the gardens that are already there and harvesting the stormwater instead of letting it flow out to the bay and carrying lots of rubbish with it. The water would then be used to irrigate the gardens. Importantly, there is a large potential yield of water from St Kilda Hill that can be harvested. The project would be similar to the Elmer and Albert Park plans, and this small proposal would be part of a larger Port Phillip-wide integrated water management system. And lastly, it's very important to note how important the history and the heritage of the Kintani Gardens. It's got the Victorian layout, and it's also next to St Kilda Beach, which is Victoria's sort of foremost or premier foreshore. So it is very important. And we've got a list of benefits, which I'll read a couple, time limit allowing. First of all, we're in a pandemic, and parks have never been more popular. So we call upon council to look after the parks, and one of the ways they could do this is by creating a stormwater harvesting project for each park, and particularly the Kintani Gardens. So it will reduce costs of water and maintenance in the long term. Less potable water will be used to water the grass. Keeping the grass green is important for tackling climate change. It'll help soften the effects of the urban heat island effect. And lastly, I'll just say that this is a small project. We're only calling for a small amount of money. We don't want to make this a really big project, but it's small and practical and has been endorsed by experts. So thank you for listening to me tonight, and I hope it is successful in the budget.
Thank you for your submission, Mr. McGartland. I'd now call upon David Blakely, President of Fitzroy Street Business Association.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors, for your time. We made a submission some time ago when the draft budget was formulated. Unfortunately, since then, we've gone into a harder lockdown and stage 4, which businesses are sharing the load, hopefully for a greater benefit of the community. We're facing a tidal wave or tsunami of unpaid bills, debts, etc., which is amounting. So today, I wish you to consider these requests. Might seem a bit extreme, but we're in extreme times at the moment for business, and the businesses provide not just economic benefit and employment of locals, etc., but also social benefit. We wish for a rate-free period along with Ackland Street for the winter quarter, only available to businesses that qualify for things like JobKeeper or a similar measure. We welcome the freeze on outside trading, and we wish for a continuation of this for at least another 6 months. And thirdly, we wish for free or heavily discounted parking to help people come back to our streets, which were suffering long before COVID, to help us rebuild. On top of this, our joint wishes, Fitzroy Street wishes for the council to co-fund Renewal Australia. The Fitzroy Street Business Association has decided to allocate $75,000 to this, which was to be provided by state government. We're doing it ourselves now, and also provide staffing for this great initiative. We feel it'd be great to capitalise on the 2 years of placemaking, the goodwill and hard work put into everyone by all aspects of the community, and having a long-term achievement of placemaking. And presently, we also, at the same time, we're looking at a commercial investment strategy for the street. And we've put this out to tender, and we wish for the council, when we propose a person to do this, we wish the council gives it due consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, David. Now call upon Helen Halliday, also speaking to item 14.4, Council Plan and Budget, hearing of submissions. Welcome, Helen.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's Helen Halliday. I'm speaking on behalf of PCAN, which is concerned with climate change issues, and I'm speaking specifically on the issues of the Green Blue City. First of all, I just wanted to point out that the City of Port Phillip has been planning for a water-sensitive city since 2010, and with the key elements being landscape planning and water planning as being the essential elements for a progressive city. Most of these elements are in the COP draft budget relating to these issues have either been delayed or there's no budget for action. Stormwater reduction, water recycling and all the other elements requires all of the sub-catchments to be identified for appropriate action to be taken. Initial work on this was done in 2008 and I've attached some maps which show the number of catchments that there are in the city of Port Phillip. Since then, opportunities for water capture and recycling have been explored, but only 2 have led to action, including most recently Ulmer Park, and the other one is Elstonwick Park, the small water wetland in Elstonwick Park. They make up a very small part of the city, in marked contrast with over the 22 areas in the city of Melbourne which either use recycled water or have in place an implementation plan for its use in parks and gardens. Acting with Bayside and Melbourne Water in the Elster Creek catchment, there are opportunities for amenity and water management, including reducing flooding risk to a large part of Elwood. The budget allocation proposed seems very small in contrast with the considerable identified benefits in the Elstonwick Park Nature Reserve Master Plan. The additional issue raised by Aidan is another area which is in the Katani Gardens area where work could be done to act on these elements. Because of the lack of time, I'll just go to the last one, which relates to the funding in particular for good tree canopy cover. In the past, the current budget has been reduced for tree planting in parks and streets, and it seems inexcusable to reduce this budget to the minimal level that it's now at, even if COVID is the reason. Some areas of the city have incorporated additional tree planting and wooded street designs, while other areas such as Balaclava and Eastern Kilda are observably deficient in open space and trees in streets. The proposed public spaces policy is aimed at assessing and reviewing our public spaces and needs urgent action. We also need to recognise that any action should include an understanding and commitment to community engagement. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Halliday. I'm assuming you're just swapping over the microphones because I've got Jack Halliday next on the list. 14.4, Council Plan and Budget, Hearing of Submissions. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. And Madam Mayor, I'd hope you'd leave a gap between Helen Halliday and myself. But anyway, I'll press on. Halliday from Balaclava, and I'm speaking for Pecan. And can I start by noting that the 300 budget submissions, 40% were concerned with sustainability issues, the highest number of all the categories. Following the public meeting Pecan had just over 5 months ago, we've held 2 public webinars in conjunction with Council. Now 2 major budget priorities are improved green-blue infrastructure and reducing community greenhouse emissions. These emissions come from residential, commercial and transport users and are approaching 2 million tonnes annually. The Council established a program to tackle community emissions 3 years ago, but for a variety of reasons it hasn't had the impact that was sought. Recently, a working group was established between Council and Pecan, and it's now meeting on a weekly basis with a view towards the development of 2 power purchase agreements in Port Phillip, one aimed at commercial and another for residential users. As you're aware, Melbourne City Council has completed 2 power purchase agreements. Port Phillip is a founding member of the first of these, and as a result, it can proudly say that its own operations are net zero emissions. Melbourne's now thinking about a third project, and Yarra Council is also starting work on a power purchase agreement for commercial users. The opportunities now present in Port Phillip to work towards the development of the first power purchase agreement, perhaps in the form of a Port Phillip Energy Cooperative, which could provide renewable energy at reduced tariffs for house and apartment dwellers. However, the draft budget shows significant cuts for community emissions programs from $300,000 to $125,000 this year. And we know more staff resourcing will be required if these projects are to be progressed. We ask Council, therefore, to review sustainability's capacity to facilitate these important projects. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Halliday. Now I call upon Josephine Samuel King, also speaking to item 14.4, Council Plan and Budget, Hearing of Submissions. Welcome, Jo. Hello. Josephine, are you there? Okay. Hello, Josephine.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, guys. Hi, Mayor and councillors. I'm Jo Samuel King, President of the Elsternwick Park Association and an Elwood resident whose property was flooded in both the 2011 and 2016 floods. And I echo the previous speakers, thanking the City of Port Phillip for remaining committed to the Elsternwick Park Nature Reserve redevelopment. There are two key reasons why we see it, or I see it as well, as absolutely vital for the City of Port Phillip to continue to be involved and to co-fund this project. The first is that it is Elwood's playground, and I quote Councillor Gross, "The reserve is our Elwood playground. During the coronavirus lockdown, we have all rediscovered the joy and necessity of our precious local open spaces," unquote Councillor Gross. The Nature Reserve has been and continues to be an absolute godsend for the City of Port Phillip residents during the COVID lockdown and needs to be acknowledged as such. And second, flooding. And again, I quote Councillor Gross, "Elwood is valuable and vulnerable." And that was in relation to flooding and climate change. The future of Elwood, especially the future of the most flood-prone parts of Elwood, is entirely dependent on proactive and practical flood management. I'm on the Elsternwick Park Nature Reserve Community Reference Panel, and we're regularly in touch with Melbourne Water and updated on Melbourne Water's progress in this regard. Melbourne Water have found two technically feasible options for effective flood mitigation works in and around the reserve. The decision regarding flood mitigation will in the end, however, be made by Treasury. And it's become very, very clear to me that unless City of Port Phillip shows and continues to show that we are serious about finding solutions and committed to flood mitigation in Elwood, unless you show that you care, there is no way the state government will be interested in spending the kind of money that is needed to sort out the flood issues within Elwood. So thank you all so much for sticking by us and remaining committed to this project.
Thanks,
you, Jo.
guys. Thank you.
Bye. See you again soon.
Okay. Now I'd like to call upon Miriam Orwin.
Through you, Mayor, Miriam Orwin has not arrived online at this point in time, and we have not received a backup statement. So we will await the arrival, and I ask you to move on to the next speaker.
Okay, thank you. I call upon April Seymour, also speaking on behalf of the Eco Centre, to item 14.4, Council Plan and Budget, Hearing of Submissions. Welcome, April.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. I'm from St Kilda East and speak tonight as the EO of the Port Phillip Eco Centre to briefly summarise community thanks to City of Port Phillip, co-founders and co-funders of the Eco Centre. Approximately 115 budget submissions encouraged council climate and sustainability investments this year and showed testimonies of the Eco Centre's benefits, including personal learning, professional skill development and volunteering, climate actions undertaken, and community connectedness before and during COVID. Submissions came from kinders, community groups, TAFE and school teachers, families, and individuals. Eco Centre experiences are described as, quote, a day changer, with a team who are, quote, very active and generous with their time and knowledge, and a hub for all ages that is, quote, a beacon of integrity, hope, and inspiration, practically and educationally, and, quote, vital to identity of my place as a COP resident. Despite many circumstances beyond human control in 2020, the Eco Centre has been nimble, adaptive, and has expanded community benefits this year under our new funding agreement. Under lockdowns, we've launched over 50 online programs, as well as a range of independent volunteering adaptations, phone trees, and weekly online lunches for our isolated community members. With emphasis on sustainable actions at home now, evaluations show 93% of program participants inspired to new eco actions. Council's base funding instilled confidence and flexibility to provide continuity and outreach to our members, volunteers, and partner groups during uncertainty. The Eco Centre supports Council Plan Directions 1, 3, and 5, with 22 examples provided in our written submission. We continue a capable, cost-effective, and trusted outreach partnership to complement Council's in-house services. Thank you, councillors, for commitment to the Eco Centre programming and planned redevelopment in this difficult budget, so that along with environmental, community, and educational outcomes, we may continue to build our portfolio of responsive, inclusive, and adaptive programming during coronavirus pandemic. In this very difficult year, the Eco Centre stands strong to play our role in our community's resilience and recovery while never losing context of the climate emergency and protecting our local environments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Seymour, right on time. Okay, I'll call upon Craig Schloffel, speaking to item 14.4, Council Plan and Budget, Hearing of Submissions. Apologies if I got that name incorrect.
That's okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My submission is focused around the budget, particularly on the wage increases within the proposed budget. I note with this point the average wage, acknowledging reduction in FTE across all areas the council has increased, but more specifically I'm concerned with particular areas such as the Office of the CEO, which is achieving an average wage increase of 3% and notably no reduction in FTE. So many businesses, people living in Port Phillip have had to rationalise staff numbers to save on costs, and there appears to be limited change to FTE, with most of the reductions of staff numbers falling into casual and contract support staff. A council which is reducing services and showing a much reduced income stream, it's concerning to me as an individual ratepayer to see FTE numbers across permanent roles largely remain unchanged. I'm also interested in how this wage increase can be justified when rates are increasing, surrounding councils are lowering rates, and when services are being reduced or reviewed. Many individual ratepayers and businesses in Port Phillip are taking personal pay reductions or losing income altogether, certainly no pay increases, which I feel council should reconsider their targeted wage increase across all roles for this financial year, particularly given the circa $3 million increase across permanent operating staff.
Thank you, Craig. Thanks for your submission. I'd like to call upon Carl Forrest, speaking to item 14.4, Council Plan and Budget, Hearing of Submissions. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors there. We are an independent 206-room hotel with 80 staff located at 562 St Kilda Road in the Gateway Ward. We've been in operation since 1985 and formerly known as the Park Royal Hotel and the Melbourne Park View Hotel. I myself have been running hotels for the last 25 years, but the last 2 being based in the St Kilda property. Our business experienced ongoing hardship due to the reduction in revenue rising out of the current pandemic. To date, we have drained our resources, having tipped in our reserves to keep the business afloat. Now the financial obligations of business have become a sensitive focal point, and in particular, how we can manage those obligations in a way that ensures our continued operation during the current challenging environment. Of course, one of these is the obligation to pay council rates and charges there. These are approximately $150K a year for our property, and we have always been a dutiful ratepayer since our inception of 1985. I acknowledge that the council has refunded some registration fees, which to my knowledge equates to approximately a mere $317. The reality is it will take 4 years to get our industry back to 2019 numbers. We are requesting that Council assist us with the 50% waiver of rates and charges over the pandemic period, with the remainder to be deferred and repayable by equal monthly instalments over a 24-month period. As a hotel, we provide a service to the community. We are an employer of 80 staff, many have lived in the city of Port Phillip. We are a place of business for many organisations to grow and thrive. In addition, we actively drive, under normal conditions, visitation to the region from interstate and interstate. We normally spend marketing of upwards up to $350K per annum. These people provide significant discretionary spend to many businesses in the city of Port Phillip region, so we add significant value under normal operations. We're very appreciative of the federal and state government support thus so far, but it's simply not enough, and we need local government to ensure our future and preserve jobs in the region and the city of Port Phillip. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carl. I'll call upon Kerry Rolack, speaking to item 14.4, Council Plan and Budget, hearing of submissions, and please clarify your name, please, Carl.
No, you did a wonderful job. Thank you, Mayor, and also our councillors. Just a quick shout out to Councillor Tim Baxter and also the Diversity Officer, Eva Zisk, who their unswerving attendance at our meetings and also direction makes us feel very appreciative and connected to the city of Port Phillip under usual times, and of course under unusual times that we find ourselves even more so. So just speaking, we collected our thoughts and made a 2-page presentation. I'm just reading out the 2 relevant bits here. So the first bit is the commentary on proposed reductions. Eva very thoughtfully gave us a briefing document containing 16 initiatives, and so I'm particularly talking to those 16 initiatives, and we're happy to endorse those. It meets our criteria. Generally speaking, the Port Phillip Multi-Faith Network continues to feed back whole of community needs to continue with reconciliation, acceptance of diversity, and reduction or eradication of ignorance-fueled racism. As COVID-19 constraints and tightening budget concerns compete with our priorities and needs. Particularly, we've mentioned 7 areas that we would encourage Council to keep in mind. Multi-faith groups especially support extending hardship provisions in the current COVID-19 crisis. Council support continues for volunteering networks. Council support for bridging the digital divide, as at the moment all religious gatherings, for example, can only be online. Often those touched by religion are elderly, and of course the digital divide is a particular exclusionary factor for them. We encourage support for funding for emerging social impacts, and we encourage support work around affordable housing and temporary accommodation for rough sleepers. We support community assistance to the various food programs doing such an amazing job beyond the call of duty as we speak. We also support work for and continuing connections with the community sector. Now, as far as the particular social recovery program, of those 16 points we talked about, 3 were particularly interesting examples. The customer satisfaction survey, we thought that rather than abandoning it, perhaps it could be electronically captured to improve time and the realness of that data and maybe the cost savings. It might also set up for other online data capturing across other areas of City of Port Phillip. The Youth Leadership and Engagement Program was deferred for, or mentioned as being deferred for 6 months. And our feeling is that there's never been a more important time to connect with, inspire, engage, and listen to what youth are experiencing, rather than deferring, with switching this to webinar, online small group discussions, or one-on-one mentoring work. Just finishing there, and also the preschool dental check program. Not sure if the program failed here, but teeth decay and hygiene are unrelated to COVID-19. So maybe there's enough way or another way of still delivering good dental hygiene to our younger constituents because it improves general health and educational outcomes over lifetimes of those individuals and societies. So in closing, we'd just like to say, regardless of the outcome, Port Phillip Multi-Faith Network appreciates Council's past support and looks forward to continuing productive relationships in whatever shape this takes from now and beyond. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rolak. Call upon Judy Gunson, please, speaking to item 14.4, Council Plan and Budget 2020-21, hearing of submissions. Welcome, Judy.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for this opportunity to speak. The urgent reduction in community emissions must be the cornerstone of any climate emergency response. It's a goal that's at the heart of what PCAN, for the Port Phillip Emergency Climate Action Network, holds, and as well is supported vigorously by the Port Phillip community, as shown in the recent Climate Emergency Community Forums. In our urban setting, where apartments predominate, the current uptake of solar panels is not enough to offset more than a tiny proportion of community emissions. We need to be creative, and now. With the assistance of some amazing sustainability staff, PCAN has begun an investigation into what is possible and available in the energy sector at the moment that could help us to solve our emissions problem. We want to reach net zero emissions as soon as possible. Our investigations suggest the need for power purchase agreements, one of which could be in the form of a Port Phillip energy cooperative, and could provide renewable energy at reduced tariffs to both residents and businesses. These options of power purchase agreements would seem to have the potential to dramatically reduce community reliance on fossil fuels. There's a lot of work to be done to get community PPAs off the ground, but it's not necessarily a large dollar investment. PCAN estimates that with the assistance of 1 to 2 able-bodied sustainability staff, over the course of the next year, we could develop one or both of these options and make great progress in reducing Port Phillip's community emissions, as well as assisting in the strength and recovery of our community in these difficult times. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, I believe, for Council to assist with something that can be done perhaps relatively easily in this time of budgetary constraint. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Judy. Call upon Peter Moriartis, speaking on behalf to item 14.4, Council Plan and Budget, hearing of submissions. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors, for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Peter Moriartis, and I'm a member of Stoppardani Macnamara and the Port Phillip Emergency Climate Action Network. I live in St Kilda. First, even in these hard times, a stark reminder. In a recent article in the online magazine The Conversation, CSIRO scientists presenting new climate modelling indicated the world will reach 2 degrees warming by 2040, and in Australia by up to an unthinkable 7 degrees warming by the end of the century, if global greenhouse gas emissions are unabated. Scientists across the world have said we need an annual global decrease of 7.5% in greenhouse gas emissions to have any chance of staying under 1.5 degrees. However, greenhouse gas emissions, despite the COVID slowdown, continue to rise. In these alarming circumstances, support from all levels of government for increased understanding and practical measures to address this unprecedented situation is imperative. Against this background, Port Phillip Council is to be commended for having initiated the Port Phillip Eco Centre 20 years ago and for continuing to support it ever since. It is good to see the Council maintain the Eco Centre operational budget and contribute to the rebuilding of the Eco Centre, which is very much needed. The Eco Centre's annual report shows the Eco Centre now attracts funds from many sources, and the Council's funding is in fact an investment in sustainability and the economy of the local community. The Port Phillip Eco Centre is a unique human-scale environmental organisation. It helps us understand how global climate and environmental factors impact our local environment and how through acting in our local environment we can come to understand this big global context. More eco centres are desperately needed across the country, and our eco centre is an exemplar for others. We congratulate Council for supporting the Eco Centre, and we should not underestimate its extraordinary continued potential, both for our community and others. Thank you, Mayor and Councillors.
Thank you, Peter. And I would like to call upon Danielle Lee. Is Danielle still on the line?
Yes, thank you.
Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Danielle Lee. I'm a Development Manager for Housing First. I'm attending this forum in place of Mr Bowden and on behalf of Housing First. Mr Bowden had intended to speak, however, unfortunately something came up in the last minute which precluded him from attending in this forum. Please accept his apologies. At the council meeting held on the 6th of March 2019, council made the following two resolutions. 1. To make available up to $1.5 million from the City of Port Phillip Community Housing Fund to be provided as grants to any registered housing agency that is applying in the current round of Victorian Government funding to build and operate social housing within the municipality of Port Phillip. And 2, to provide those eligible registered housing agencies a one-off payment not exceeding $15,000 excluding GST per dwelling unit to help fund their application and project. In accordance with these resolutions, it is requested that Council consider and resolve to approve within the budget plan for the 2021 financial year a contribution of $690,000 to assist with the funding of the Marlborough Street project. The Marlborough Street project is a key part of the City of Port Phillip's In Our Backyard strategy. This project will see the delivery of 46 new social housing homes within the Port Phillip Housing Trust. The proposed project will not only provide much-needed economic stimulus by providing hundreds of jobs in the economy through its construction, but it will also provide high-quality homes in an area that is close to fantastic amenity that will help ease housing stress that is only further burdened by the current COVID state. We ask that Council approve and include this funding as the request accords with Council's intention when passing the initial resolutions, and noting that it will allow the Trust to build 46 quality, modern and sustainable homes that are required now more so than ever by the people of the City of Port Phillip. Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your submission, Danielle. Now, councillors, that's the end of the session where the people come on and speak live. We've now got 5 further submissions, and that will be read out on behalf of the members of the public. And I'll call the name of each member of the public and refer the Coordinator Governance to read a summary of the submissions. And a copy of all statements will be published in full on Council's website tomorrow. First up, in relation to public question time, is Steve Grapsis.
Through you, Madam Mayor, public question submitted by Steve Grapsis reads, it is my understanding that Port Phillip CEO currently still resides in South Australia. If this is the case, can Council please advise me how the CEO of the City can manage all activities in relation to our City by living in another state? End of question.
Thank you. I'm going to take up that question and answer that. The CEO has resided in Melbourne since the beginning of his tenure at the City of Port Phillip. He has retained his family residence in South Australia as a residence for his adult children, and currently his wife, who has returned from living in Melbourne with the CEO to care for the family during the pandemic. The CEO, like all senior managers at the City of Port Phillip, have been working very hard from his home in Melbourne since early March and has led the organisation's successful response to the pandemic through working long hours over the last 5 to 6 months. During the last 6 months, the CEO has returned to South Australia twice to visit his family. During these 2 visits, the CEO has continued to work from home for the city with no loss of productivity, as well as taking some leave to spend time with his family. It's a mark of the CEO's dedication to the city that the CEO recently cancelled some of his leave to lead the organisation's response to these most recent stage 4 restrictions. The CEO will return to Melbourne very shortly and will continue to work from home in Melbourne on his return. So the next submission from Tony Old.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Tony Old public question reads, since living in Port Melbourne 9 years, Bay Street has been sadly neglected by council. The gateway to Melbourne via Port Melbourne must give the cruise liner passengers the impression of a less than average third world country. Vast sums of council funds have been squandered elsewhere on inconsequential projects while Bay Street has been sadly neglected. Our beaches are groomed on a regular basis while rubbish is left strewn on our footpaths and gutters. Council must improve our footpaths and implement a far more regular rubbish removal and clean-up process. End of submission.
Thank you. As there's no question there, I don't need to ask an officer to respond. So we'll move on to Council Plan and Budget Hearing of Submissions. Kay McKenzie, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Kay McKenzie submits in relation to the Port Phillip Eco Centre continued funding. The Eco Centre ticks all the boxes in Council strategic plan. Thank you for supporting the Eco Centre and their essential education, research and volunteering programs, especially in a world experiencing climate change. The Eco Centre supports our community by sharing with young and old valuable information about our ecosystems on land, in the bay and in the rivers of Port Phillip and beyond, by empowering us with the tools to interact with them sustainably and take action to effect positive, meaningful change and support others who want to live sustainably. In addition to the programs run by and at the Eco Centre, such as Working Bees, information and film nights, open house days, AGMs, festivals, planting bees, etc., and all its online activities, videos and information, the Eco Centre is an umbrella organisation supporting many smaller community groups in our municipality, including Billy Nursery, Veg Out, Friends of Westgate Park, Earth Care, Penguins, Elster Creek, Elstonwick Park, etc. The Port Phillip Eco Centre has also given me opportunities to learn from our local First Nations, the Boonatung, their ancient knowledge systems and approaches. The schools programs run by the Eco Centre's education team are world class. What I've seen firsthand at schools and even kindergartens and childcare centres is joyful and deeply inspiring. Please continue to prioritise the Eco Centre programs in this and future budgets. The Eco Centre has outgrown its tiny eco house and requires a larger centre to continue to fully support the growing demand for education in and connection to sustainability and environmental concepts and practice. Please make good on Council's initial commitments to support the redevelopment in this and future budgets. On top of this already disastrous year, I was appalled to read that the Council is once again considering raising rates multiple times over the next few years. Rates are amongst the highest in the state. The economy itself has gone backwards this year. Please do not raise our rates. I request that the Council not push forward with pay increases for COP staff while the rest of the community is struggling with unemployment, reduced wages or the threat of business stress or failure. It may be timely to address the 42% of rates that are currently paid to staff and investigate whether this can be done more effectively. The Council has been promising a greener, more sustainable municipality for years, but the waste removal and disposal strategy does not appear to have changed. Work with community groups like the Eco Centre to introduce, like so many other municipalities have already done, green waste bins so the Council can do composting for us and provide us with high-grade compost and reduce the waste to landfill. End of submission.
Thank you. Now, I believe John Spearings is on the line, Kirsty. Are we able to let him in to speak? He's
I
just
will
messaged me.
just confirm for you, Madam Mayor, just a moment. Yes, he is, and he's available to speak now.
Thank you. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, councillors. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of Progressive Port Phillip. I'm a resident of Elwood. During this pandemic, council has taken really important steps to redeploy staff and provide funding to supply food and other essentials to residents during it tough. It's provided rate relief and rental relief packages to businesses and residents, and directly supported artists and their work amongst many other measures. But now is the time to step up further. It is time to both act on the needs of the community right now as we're in the grip of the pandemic and the worst phase of the pandemic, and to plan for the future. We know that this is not easy when the pandemic and a deep recession are upon us and when the future seems so uncertain. So council must be flexible and responsive to the circumstances. As immediate steps, we suggest prioritising, firstly, giving further consideration to targeted rate relief for residents and businesses in receipt of JobKeeper and JobSeeker payments, especially as these programs are stepped down in coming months. Also, working closely with trader organisations to ensure that retail shopping strips in the municipality pull through this crisis. This is an existential moment for many traders. We strongly support the proposal of the Fitzroy Street Traders Association and the Acton Street Traders Association for co-investment to start a true revival of those streets. Reversing proposed cuts to the library book vote, council assist services, early childhood services, streetscaping and tree planting and community grants, and a number of other smaller cuts, and pulling forward the capital works that are slated for delay. And investing in local jobs and addressing ageing social infrastructure through the fast track, easily doable and necessary small project and maintenance works that we have suggested in our larger submission. As well, council should take on larger projects that will provide new social infrastructure and help prepare residents and the community for the impact of dangerous climate change. The community rightly expects council to be financially prudent, and these measures can be delivered through a combination of savings, borrowings, and strategic and judicious use of reserves, as we have outlined in our larger submission. Such a package is affordable and responsible and will make a tangible difference to the local community, local economy, and local jobs. It will build assets for the future. We must come out of this crisis in a way that leaves no one behind and that ensures our children have a future to look forward to rather than a future to fear. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening.
Thank you, John. And councillors, just to keep us on our toes, we've got another person that's logged in and wants to speak to us live. I call upon Chris Fort, please, speaking on the council budget. Chris, are you singing? Okay. Looks like that's Chris's submission. Thank you, Chris. Now we'll go to Trevor White, speaking to the council plan and budget.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The next submission is Trevor White, and the submission reads, thank you for the opportunity to comment on the draft budget. COVID has affected us all. It has created new needs and expectations of the community, which in turn has required a transformation of the provision and delivery of services by council. Across the community, the last 10 weeks have seen more transformation in thinking and practices than has occurred in the last 10 years. Council has begun to change the way it provides services, which will continue as the new way to work and operate into the future. New ways of working will occur under the Local Government Act, which could include the use of the citizens' assemblies and juries to gain direct input from the community. The community is an amazing resource and consultancy, employ and buy locally. This COVID period will be seen as a change ratchet, not a slippery dip back to the past. The 2021 budget needs to reflect these changes and not just assume that past services and practices will return. Our Unchained submission states that it's good to see the commencement of the CEO's restructuring of the waistline of the staff structure, roles and cost. We strongly recommend that Council implements a targeted rate relief policy to assist those who are on social support, JobKeeper, JobSeeker and business owners and landlords who have lost income, and we urge the Audit Committee to undertake a root and branch efficiency, effectiveness and capacity independent review of all aspects of the governance and operations of Council. In particular, the changing community needs and priorities, and hence the method of delivery of the required services, or procurement, consultancy and contact practices, the design and compliance management of the financial and non-financial aspects of leases and licences, review of commercial operations and maintenance of infrastructure programs, review the success rate of applications for state and federal government grant programs and other sources of funding, review the implementation of the climate change mitigation and adaptation programs as presented by PCAN. We all have changed over the last few months. What we need, how we work, what job can I get now and in the future? How will my business change and will it survive? And what we expect Council to do and provide. Council is part of these changes. It needs to rethink and realign its services and refresh operations. Our detailed policy on the budget and proposed targeted rate relief policy and the triangle have been submitted in our submissions, which you would have read. My specific questions: will Council develop a targeted rate relief policy and fund the triangle business case? And will Council ask the Audit Committee to undertake an efficiency, effectiveness and capacity review and be more available to the community? Thank you. End of submission.
Thanks very much, and thanks for reading those out, Kirsty. Now we've come to the end of our speakers for tonight. That was quite an effort. So appreciate everyone sitting and listening to that. And thank you to everyone in the community that had taken the time to communicate with the councillors about in particular, the budget tonight. So we'll move on in the agenda. Item 5 is councillor question time. So I have asked councillors if they've got any questions. I will go first, and then I can see Councillor Pearl, you have a question. So my question is perhaps to Mr. Johnson. In Council's Act and Adapt strategy, it outlines a possibility of a waste levy to fund the significant increases in costs surrounding the waste requirements. Can you confirm, as it's not currently obvious, that we have postponed this waste levy at the moment as per the draft budget? And is there any way to update the council website to inform our community of this?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can confirm that there's no waste and amenity levy in the draft 2021 budget, and yes, happy to update Council's website to make that clear.
Thank you. Councillor Pearl.
Thanks very much. I've got 4 or 5 really quick ones. First one, I just got a telephone call this evening from the Dig-In Community Garden in Port Melbourne asking for clarification about their ability to operate for members to access the site under stage 4 restrictions on the basis of shopping or food provision, etc.
Okay, so Mr. Carroll, I think that might be a question for you. I believe community gardens are okay, but just perhaps we'll have to take that on notice.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. I'm not fully across the precise implications of the restrictions. We're still getting our head across all those at the moment, and I'll take that on notice and we'll come back to you.
Another one, Councillor Pearl.
Yeah, thanks very much. Second question is in relation to the former Brewster site in Port Melbourne. Would officers be able to give an update on what's happening at that site in terms of the council lease, etc.?
Ms McNeil.
Through you, Mayor, the former Brewster site went out to public tender, and that tender didn't end up being able to be completed because of the pandemic. It had an impact on the outcome. So we are looking to go back out to secure a commercial tenant.
Yes, Councillor Pearl.
Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. The third question is in relation to nature strip gardens in South Melbourne, particularly in and around Coventry Street. Wondering if officers could detail their approach. I've been approached by about 20 local community members who have created makeshift planter boxes, is the best word, around trees along the streets, providing some well-needed beautification to the local area and also some terrific camaraderie between residents there. Just wondering if officers can detail, and this is probably a question for Mr Trail, about our approach to ensure the balance between compliance and also the good work that the community is doing in this area in South Melbourne.
Yes, Mr Trail.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, officers have been on site looking at these gardens. We do have nature strip guidelines that we're referring to, but these gardens have created lots of good community will. So we're trying to look at what are the most urgent and safety items in terms of infrastructure that may create trip hazards or infrastructure that may block sight lines to pedestrian crossings and intersections. So we're just trying to make good at the moment and then sort of create other solutions to continue to support this activity, but get it within guidelines and compliance restrictions.
Thank you, Mr Trail. Councillor Pearl.
And one last one, if possible. Just wondering, is council? So the question was from the resident that's called me before. Is council aware of any door knocking going on in our community by state or federal authorities to ensure that people infected with coronavirus are staying home? And is council assisting in this activity at all?
Mr Carroll.
Through you, Mayor, not to my knowledge, but if one of my colleagues has any information on that, I'll find out and we'll report back to you.
Through you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Keenan.
There is work being done, has been work being done for some time with voluntary testing, particularly on public housing estates. But other than that, we haven't been involved in any door-to-door or working with residents. That would be a matter for the police and the Defence Force. And we haven't been notified, but I assume that it is happening as part of what's been announced by the state government.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr Keenan. And while we're talking about COVID, maybe you could give an update on whether any staff at the City of Port Phillip have been affected.
Through you, Mayor, bearing in mind the privacy of the individuals, but there have been 2 staff members in the last 2 weeks who have been diagnosed as having COVID. In both cases, were alerted with sufficient time, and there had been time elapsed before the person developing symptoms and being at work, so we were very fortunate there. In both cases, the processes were put in place with our team for notifying other staff members, and in the case of the childcare centre, notifying parents and families. The centre was closed, and then we were advised by DHHS when we were able to reopen. In both cases, we weren't required to do a deep clean. As I understand, Mr Johnson can correct me if I'm wrong on the one in his area, because we had been probably overly cautious, which meant that the centres weren't exposed. So it was just a general clean rather than a full intense clean that was required.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I might just add that we ended up doing an intense clean in the circumstance in our division as well with the other facility, but it wasn't actually a requirement. We did it just to ensure that the area was safe.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Councillor Gross.
Hi, I'm not on mute, am I?
No, I can hear you.
I wish to table a question, and I've sent to all councillors and the ELT. I won't read it out. It's about the recent erection of an Elwood sign at Point Ormond, which was sort of wittily mimicked the Hollywood sign in the Hollywood Hills and was universally welcomed as a fun and uplifting moment. I know that some officers are looking at this, and I just wish to make it public that I wish to get advice on this particular issue. So if I could table that question, and I'll get an answer in due course.
Thank you, Councillor Gross. We will take that on notice. Appreciate that. Any further questions, councillors? Okay, then, so we'll move to the ceiling schedule. So the next item on the agenda, item 6. And councillors, we have one item for ceiling on tonight's agenda, which is 6.1, Albert Park Tennis Hockey Joint Venture and Lease. Does anyone have any questions of the officers in relation to this report? So no questions. Councillors, we have an officer's recommendation. Councillor Gross to move and Councillor Pearl to second. Councillor Gross, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to say that I think this is a great joint venture. This is a really good facility that's highly used, particularly in winter. And I'm happy to recommend that we seal the lease.
Thank you, Councillor Gross. Councillor Pearl, would you like to speak?
No, thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? If not, I will put that motion under division and call upon each councillor for your vote. First up, Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Brand.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford.
For.
Councillor Gross.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Simic.
For.
Councillor Voss. For. Councillor Baxter.
For.
That motion is unanimously carried. Thank you. We'll move to item 7, petitions and joint letters. And we have one petition on tonight's agenda. It is 7.1. I might ask you, Councillor Brand, to pop your microphone on mute, please. Request to access the St Kilda Peanut Farm Pavilion and oval lighting by the Dog Owners Group of St Kilda. So we heard from several submitters earlier. Do you have any questions of the officers? I can see Councillor Crawford has a question.
I've actually got a couple, Mayor. So one of the questions I was wondering is, do we have an estimated time that it might take to put an automatic timer system in? And the second question is, I wasn't really clear where the issue lay from the speakers. Is it that, are they not allowed to use the field just when there's no sport playing there? And the third question was, given the requirements of health and the safety of players on that sporting field, who covers the insurance for holes and sticks and things like that? So I guess if I could get answers to those three, please.
Okay, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I'll answer the first part of the question. I might defer to Mr Trail to answer the second part of Councillor Crawford's question. We intend to install the timer on the lighting system in the next few weeks. That obviously depends upon what the restrictions are that are currently being worked through at the moment that relate to installation works. So assuming that that can proceed, we should have the timer installed in the next couple of weeks. I'll defer to Mr Trail to answer the question on their liability.
Thank you, Mr Trail.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just to further add to Mr Johnson's, we have got the timer booked subject to a resolution being adopted, and so if we're able to get on works, that can happen in the next couple of days. In regards to the question regarding sport and liabilities, we do licence times of the week for sport to happen. Outside of that time, it is free for any use, be that passive use, be that dog walking, picnicking, general walking, exercise, etc. In terms of liabilities, it is liabilities of the club, association and council. So we do need to provide a safe surface for use of sporting grounds, and association clubs are required to inspect that prior to match fixtures happening. So there's a dual check that happens in regards to that process. So in our resolution, we talk about the constant monitoring of the surface is going to be essential through supporting multiple uses of this particular space.
Thank you.
Thank you. Were they all the questions for Councillor Crawford?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, great. Councillor Brand, you have a question?
Yes, I'd like to take up a question that was asked by the very first submitter, I think, just about the possibility of doing better with the allocation of sorting out the distribution of time there between the sporting and the dogs. It seems that if we follow the protocol that we're proposing, that sport takes precedence over dogs, which I happen to totally agree with, we can end up with this situation which was described as blanket bookings, that they're booked out, sort of early, and it would mean that there's just a blanket impossibility for the dogs there most of the time. I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can have a protocol that can actually share it in a more detailed sort of way, that there can be some way of registering whether there actually is going to be sport on the field rather than just having it booked for it, or maybe whether half an oval is available, if not the whole oval is not going to be used for practice or whatever, if there's some system that can be put in which is more finely tuned than just on or off each night.
Okay, thank you. Mr Johnson?
Through you, Mayor, I'll defer to Mr Trail.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, there are opportunities that we can look at that. The resolution just notes what the licence agreements are. So just to give context, we do have 26 junior boys and girls teams that are shared across Waddy Watson and Peanut Farm Reserve. We have a senior men's and a senior women's football teams that also operate. So it is a ground that is highly utilised, but we are trying to, when there is no use of sport, we are more than happy to support other activities, including this dog working group. So we've just tried to note, and it's hard to predict the impacts of COVID into next winter season in terms of participation numbers, and but that is something that we'll note. And once we have better accuracy of teams for next season, we can look at the opportunities to maximise use of other groups outside of that sport, subject to the ground conditions, obviously.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for that or something different? Just if you're commenting, please make sure it's to all panellists.
I'm happy to move an amended motion, but
okay, Councillor Gross.
So my amendment would be the officer's recommendation, but with an amended Clause 2 and an amended Clause 7. The amended Clause 2 would be recognises whilst the primary purpose of the Oval and Pavilion is sporting community groups, the exclusive use by sporting groups is negotiated to include some limited co-usage by dog warders for a time in a defined corner of the Oval, if possible. And the amended 7 would be...
Actually, sorry, just 1 second, Councillor Gross. Is that correct, what's on the screen there? She's typing it very fast.
It's very good.
Oh, good. And 7, thank you.
7 would be notes that in a normal winter season, the ground is available on Monday night and that co-usage is negotiated on other weekday evenings given the breadth of lighting now available on the Oval, full stop, and further that any co-usage by dog waters is facilitated by the removal of dog litter, sticks and other litter and the prevention of hole digging to the maximum extent possible.
That's quite extraordinary. They've got that all. Can you just check that, please? And then we'll see if we've got a seconder. Is that correct?
Looks pretty good to me.
Okay, do we have a seconder for Councillor Gross's amendment, a motion? That motion has failed. So we will go back to the original officer's motion. Do I have a mover for that or something different?
So, Madam Mayor, I'll just point out I did put in the chat to move for the officer's recommendation before.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Baxter, I can't see it. Oh, there it is. Apologies. So you're happy to move this motion, Councillor Baxter?
The officer's recommendation, correct.
And Councillor Bond, are you happy to second the officer's recommendation?
That's correct.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter, would you like to, do you have a clarifying question, Councillor Brand?
No, it was going to be on the amendment.
Okay. Apologies, something's happened to my chat there, so it sort of disappeared. Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak to the motion?
Sure. Look, I'll do it briefly. I'd like to thank the petitioners for putting forward this petition and acknowledge that there can certainly be some difficulty in managing different uses of our public spaces, particularly in an urban sort of context where there's a lot of pressure on our public spaces. So I'm hoping that this moves us more towards a better balance. I understand that the dog walkers are not pleased with every single one of these points. I do think that there is some capacity for us in the future, similar to what Councillor Gross was proposing, for us to facilitate some better communication between the dog walkers and the clubs in order to, just get a better use overall by the community. It would be good for it to be used, for that space to be used as much as possible without impacting on other groups. So hopefully this is a good step towards that. And I like to think that it's probably not the end of the conversation here, but it's certainly one step in it.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Councillor Bond?
Yes, I would like to speak to the motion. Whilst I'm sympathetic to what Councillor Gross was trying to achieve, it doesn't work in practical terms when there's a football club out training on an oval. When a football club is training, they need the entire oval. They break up into groups, and some groups, seniors go to one end, reserves go to the other. They run laps of the oval as punishment or as warm-up or cool down and all that sort of thing that happens throughout a training session that goes for an hour and a half or 2 hours. It's just not practical to have a quarter of an oval licence to a group of dog walkers while a footy club is trying to train in that particular area. So whilst I understand what Councillor Gross was trying to do by having people share this particular area, dogs and football training sessions just don't mix. It's just, it would only cause conflict between the dogs and the footballers, or the dog owners and the footballers, and you would wind up with some very undesirable outcomes. What we should be doing is looking at more off-lead dog areas. The reason people want to walk their dogs down there is because it has a fence around it. We should be looking at putting off-leash dog areas, fenced even, in places like Moran Reserve with lighting. I know I've often talked about Talbot Reserve in St Kilda behind the National Theatre. We could put a little dog off-leash area there to take some of the pressure off the Peanut Farm Reserve and give dog walkers different options at that time of night where they and their dogs can have exclusive use of various spaces away from where the footballers are training. So for that reason, I can't support, or wasn't going to support, Councillor Gross's amendments, but happy with the original officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Councillor Gross?
Well, I actually agree with a lot of what Councillor Bond was saying. The reason why I'm making an effort to try and change the conversation around this is several-fold. Firstly, you have to see the Peanut Farm dog walking community in action to appreciate just how large, vibrant and important this particular community is. And it's not just here, but there are other off-lead places like in Elstonwick Park, which are just huge. And it's a phenomenon of social congregation that we need to take into account in our policies going forward. Secondly, I wanted to, in my amendment, which wasn't seconded, take into account Emily's thing that there has to be give and take with the two communities. So I think we, want to say to the dog walkers, we love you, but, you've got certain obligations, and help us make sure those obligations to keep the surface intact. I think that might be important to stress as part of the ongoing management. Thirdly, the other thing I've noticed in my various trips down there is the extraordinary impact of the new lighting. So the lighting used to be congregated on one side of the field, and that would lead to massive deterioration on that side of the field. And now we've got this great lighting system, which I've never actually seen on, to tell you the truth, but it looks as though it would cover every single square metre of the field. So I think that on the eastern wing, it could be organised with putting up some sort of, visual barrier like markers to have a bit of a dog area. So I don't think it's actually impossible to organise in the future. And the eastern wing would be my suggestion, and that would be in the light. And finally, I think the issue with exclusive use is it's all about time poverty. When is it that you can get everyone from a footy club onto training? And you do that by setting strict time limits. Unfortunately, there are time-poor dog owners who will get home from work at the very same time. So we just have to try to work out how to take into account those time-poor dog owners who are part of a large and vibrant community that we need to encourage and congratulate. So I'm going to vote in favour of this. I just wanted to alert people to the conversations going forward about how we try to aspire to co-usage, if at all possible, and I agree that it's hard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gross. Councillor Brand.
Thank you. Just really wanting to, I actually agree with the previous speakers who were sort of sympathetic with Councillor Gross, including Councillor Gross himself. But just to say, I think it's a totally valid point that that the sporting clubs and teams should have the fundamental priority of the space. It's very hard to get a whole lot of people together at the same time onto a sporting field. They're rare. They've got to be used that way. But I hope that once you sort of allow that fundamental principle, that we can work with the dogs to find every opportunity within that sort of fundamental criterion to use the oval and to use clever communications to find out whether, even though it might be booked out that night, that actually it's not going to be used that night because of some other thing that's happening, that there can be some way of doing that. Similarly with the lighting, if we can't get the lighting in very quickly, there may be some other way around it. I just think as long as council really undertakes to be as accommodating and is willing to use workarounds as much as possible, and to encourage communication between the president of the dog walkers with the sporting teams and what have you, somehow we can, with goodwill and communications, we should be able to maximise it. Just the mention of a blanket booking made me feel that is actually a formula which, even though it's totally valid as a starting point, is inimical to actually maximising the usage of the place. So that's the sort of thing that we need to work around to optimise the usage as much as we possibly can on those terms. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. Councillor Baxter, would you like to close?
No, thank you.
Then I'll put that motion, councillors, under division, and I'm going to call upon each of you for your vote. First up, Councillor Brand.
4.
Councillor Copsey.
4.
Councillor Crawford.
4.
Councillor Gross.
4.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Simic.
4.
Councillor Voss. 4. Councillor Baxter.
4.
Councillor Bond.
4.
That motion is unanimously carried. Now we'll move on to the presentation of reports. And the first one is 8.1, which is the CEO report. First up, councillors, do you have any questions of the officers? I have a couple I'd like to ask on the CEO report. The first one, it says it's marked as completed to deliver the Design and Development Awards to showcase and promote design excellence in Port Phillip. As I said, it has been marked completed, yet I was still expecting a ceremony to inform the community of the winners. I just wanted to get an update of why that's marked as completed, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can respond to that question, and thank you for alerting me to that. You're correct. Although we have held the Port Phillip Design and Development Awards in terms of the inviting submissions, considering submissions, and actually selecting applicants, shortlisted applicants, who were notified and published, we haven't been able to hold the awards presentation event, which was originally scheduled for March due to the COVID-19 restrictions that have been in place to various degrees since then. and we do intend now to have some sort of events ceremony, but the postponement of the award ceremony once again could not be proceeded with due to the advanced restrictions now. So we will be discussing that with councillors. We have a couple of options in considering virtual presentations and ceremonies, and we'll be presenting that, as I said, to councillors for consideration shortly and amend the CEO report. So thank you once again for alerting me to that.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure how long I can keep this secret for. Councillor Pearl, you have a question.
Yes, Mayor, just in relation to South Melbourne Town Hall, could we get an update on any future public access to South Melbourne Town Hall and what the situation in the building is at the moment?
Thank you. Ms McNeil.
Through you, Mayor, the South Melbourne Town Hall is in the process of being assessed for a range of things, so the structure, but also the electrical, the fire services, HVAC. It's getting a full assessment, but what we do know through the first round of information that we've received from the structural assessment is that there are some significant structural issues that caused us to close the building. While we undertake further assessment, that information is still pending. There are some areas of the building that are quite difficult to access, and particularly being a heritage building. So we're being very careful to make sure that we are able to get access without damaging the building. So that's taking a bit of extra time for us to be able to complete the report. But until we have the full assessment and are able to work out a strategy for responding to that structural assessment, we will need to keep the building closed, unfortunately.
Could I ask a follow-up?
Certainly.
Just on that, it looks like a bit of a prison cell at the moment with the volume of temporary fencing up at all the entrances around the building. Obviously, there's not a huge civic presence there at the moment given coronavirus, but if the building is to be closed for a prolonged period of time, which based on what you said it is there a more aesthetically pleasing way we can secure the building than the fences we have around the entrances at the moment?
Through you, Mayor, yes, we can definitely have a look at that. The team have prioritised safety and making sure that people know not to go in the building, but we can have a look at how we can make that more aesthetically pleasing.
Thank you, Ms McNeil. I have another question as well. It's around some commentary on page 43 that we have developed a process to require developers to work with council to commission art on hoardings. I'm just wondering if you can briefly describe what that might be and where we might see what that process is, please. Maybe it's Ms Rosick.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll invite Mr Keenan to respond to that question. It's linked to the Art and Soul strategy actions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms Rosick. Through you, Mayor. Council received a report, I think, 2 councils ago finalising the project and with some recommendations around that. There was an action in Art and Soul that explored the feasibility of this. Essentially, there were three sites identified. 2 went ahead, and the conclusion was that it was financially too prohibitive for us to oblige developers to undertake hoardings, but that we should continue to try to negotiate art on hoardings. And I'm not sure if Sandra's online if you wanted more detail on that. And Sandra is here for another item. I can just...
Ms Kazam?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, that's correct. The heart and soul strategy was to develop the process, and we did develop the process and we evaluated it. And as Tony said, there was not a big uptake for developers. It wasn't a priority for them, and it did detract from their key business. And even though there was funding to pay for hoardings, there was not a great uptake of it. And so the process was developed, it was tested, and the report was that it would require a lot of extra funding from council and effort to entice developers to continue with the project.
Thank you, Ms Kazam. Councillors, any further questions? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for that or something different? Councillor Copsey to move, Councillor Simic to Councillor Copsey to move, and Councillor Pearl to second. Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Councillor Pearl, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thanks.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Well, I will briefly just say once again, it's quite an extraordinary report. This CEO report each month details information, gives it quite a lot of transparency, and gives a good review of what's actually gone on in the month prior. You know, just to call out a couple of things in particular, we've now got data in there from the local government surveys, and I think it's really quite extraordinary how well council has performed against the objectives. So most of them are now filled in, and I just want to say, you know, that's great. We set these quite high, this quite high bar, and now we've got the results, and it's you know, on most counts, extraordinary. A couple of other special mentions to call out, and if anyone's read the report, you would see it, but I just wanted to say that something that we've all been longing for a long time, like the FOGO trial, has commenced. You know, that's a big tick for this council, and I'm looking forward to seeing the data on that. We received over $15 million in grants in the last financial year, and that's also quite extraordinary. So we do very well on the advocacy scene. We've won awards, and one of our most recent one is for our annual report in terms of its high standard, how readable it is. The St Kilda Marina, another great big project that we've been working on for the last 4 years, is now out of the blocks, and so that's in a process at the moment, in a final process, so that's quite extraordinary. We've been holding budget consultations and submissions. Obviously, we've heard a lot even tonight about the trials and tribulations of COVID-19 pandemic, but what's been great about it as well is you've seen some extraordinary things from our community, in particular the food and making sure that people have basic services, and council working very closely with DHHS on any outbreaks, and they've been called out and in terms of how well that has gone. And I also wanted to call out another project that we've been working on for a very long time, and that's Marlborough. The Marlborough Street Affordable Housing project has also been made public, that is going ahead. So some great things there, I think, to be proud of, and it's all detailed just in this month's work, let alone every single month. So I do encourage people to have a look at that CEO report and just to see what's going on. So thank you for the officers for putting that together each month. I think it really makes a big difference in terms of what actually is seen by the community that we do, that our council does, our officers does, what happens in the community. And so, Councillor Copsey, would you like to close?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think you summarised really well. It's a great report, and I thank the officers for the effort that goes into not just producing the report, but every wonderful project that's happening within it.
Thank you. So now I'll put the motion under division and call upon each councillor for your vote. First up, Councillor Copsey. Can you say that again? I just missed you.
4.
4, thank you. Councillor Crawford.
4.
Councillor Gross.
4.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Simic.
4.
Councillor Voss. 4. Councillor Baxter.
4.
Councillor Bond.
4.
Councillor Brand.
4.
Thank you. That motion is unanimously carried. The next item on the agenda is 9.1, which is the Children's Services Policy, the implementation, the report on public interest regarding council-operated services. So we've heard quite a lot from the community around this one as well. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers? I note there are no questions. So we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for that or something different?
I'm happy to move.
Councillor Gross to move. I'm happy to second. Councillor Gross, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, I think all I want to say about this is that this has been an interesting and publicly at times difficult issue for us. But what I really like about this current recommendation is that it notes that there has been considerable cost discipline in this area, and that has enabled us to put the competitive neutrality issue behind us. And secondly, I just love the way we've worked out how we can provide support for vulnerable families and how we're going to really go for it over the near future. So, yeah, I think it's a good story and well told by the officers.
Thank you, Councillor Gross. I've just got a clarifying question, please, Mr. Keenan, if I may, in terms of the the annual review. Am I able to ask, please, is there what sort of cost is that to review annually? Would it be better to move that to 2 years? Hello, Mr. Keenan.
Sorry, through you, Mayor. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Really, that's to comply with the better regulation framework as set out by the Victorian government. We are required to attest every year that we comply with competitive neutrality and with NCP, so it wouldn't be huge cost. We will be doing an annual report each year on our performance against the overall objectives of the policy, and so it could be incorporated into that. But that recommendation is really to ensure that we annually attest that we comply with NCP and competitive neutrality, and that would then ensure that if there was a complaint, that we've already done that work. Clearly, if there was a situation that meant that we weren't complying, well, we would then have to say that when we did that annually. Teresa Parsons might also want to add something to that.
Ms. Parsons, no?
Through, I think Mr. Kinnan has answered that very clearly. Yeah, it's an obligation that we've got to review any businesses that we're operating that could be in scope of national competition policy on a regular basis.
All right, thanks for clarifying. So as I'm the seconder, I'm going to reserve my right at this point. Now the next one on the list we've got is Councillor Brand. He is requesting an amendment.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to propose an amendment to this proposed motion, a very minor one, that would have the words in 3.3 altered in that proposal for what the policy should be, how the policy should be reworded. Take out the word minimise and replace it with ensure the efficiency of. I think that reads like English. There may need to be a similar alteration to 3.2, where it would take minimise, and I think we can say something like, instead of minimise, I haven't quite got the grammar right on this because I haven't thought it out properly, but something like is making efficient use of, or makes efficient use of any direct, or uses efficiently. Maybe I'm open to suggestion on that. To ensure that uses makes efficient use of any direct subsidy by council.
Mr. Carroll.
I'm sure there's a better way of saying it.
Councillor Brand is requesting some advice. Do you have any?
Through you, Mayor. Ensures efficient use or makes efficient use of any direct subsidy by council. I think that's fine.
Thank you.
And yes, it starts off with ensures. Anyway, let's run with that. That it might get altered later on anyway. But that, I think, it needs to be done just to reflect what the substantive one is in the in 3.3.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Councillor Brand. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Crawford to second. Thank you. Would you like to speak to your motion, Councillor?
Yes, I would very much. Yes. Look, I agree with the mover of this motion. I'm really so happy with it. It's come out very, very well. It's just so I'm wholeheartedly supportive of the whole motion. There's just one small, I think it's a logical contradiction within it that I really feel needs to be fixed up by this amendment. And it's a very sensitive issue, but it's only a very small fix that's needed for it. Basically, the public interest test that we did showed that Council's operational model of providing childcare in the city is in the public interest, and that model includes, well, a whole lot of factors that make it a particularly beneficial service to the public. One of the factors is that it does operate with a small surplus that it invests into the provision of its services, and that has an effect on, well, in a whole lot of things in the service, in council childcare in particular. But one of them, for instance, is that it is that council is noted as being particularly good for seeking out and looking after particularly vulnerable children in the community, and it's something which is especially obviously other systems work well too, but this is something that council has been noted as especially good at, and it's a very important function, and it is in part supported by a subsidy that helps council do that well and economically for the community. So if that subsidy is actually providing a benefit, it just doesn't make sense that our aim would be to minimise that subsidy. I think we really mean that we're doing something else. We are meaning that when we use that subsidy, if we use it, that we ensure that it's used efficiently, and if it's not necessary to use it, that would be a completely inefficient use of a subsidy. So it's just rewording it so it's not contradicting itself, that it's actually supporting the fundamental goal of having of the way that it operates, and then saying, and within that goal, we need to ensure that the subsidy is minimised. But you can't say it the way we've said it before. We need to make sure that it works efficiently. It's an important point to make the whole policy, I guess, coherent and complete in this way. I appeal to all the councillors to support this. It's a tiny measure which I think makes the whole policy coherent in a way which actually unifies the different views that we've had at different times in this council. I think that this whole motion, and in particular this tiny fix, is something which actually makes the policy work for all of us. And I think it'd be great if we can all come together and support it. This is the one little thing which I think is a bug in the system, and that I sort of feel is very important to be attended to. I think one of the most important factors is that we acknowledge that at different times it might be important if the subsidy is actually providing a benefit. It may well be that more subsidy is needed sometimes, and I think it's really important that we don't rule that out, or maintaining the subsidy at its current level, especially as it's targeted in part towards the vulnerable provision for vulnerable children. It's an integral part of the whole policy, and I think we shouldn't be contradicting ourselves in it. So I appeal to you to vote for it, please.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. Councillor Crawford, would you like to speak to the amendment? Sorry, I didn't hear you, Councillor Crawford. No?
Could I ask a clarifying question, please?
Councillor Gross, you can ask a clarifying question.
Just of the officers, are there any unintended or unforeseen consequences as a result of the change of the words?
Mr. Keenan?
Through you, Mayor, no, not that I can think of. Yeah, it's probably a more positive expression that we make efficient use of any subsidy provided by council.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to... Oh, Councillor Pearl, you have a clarifying question as well?
Yeah, sorry, I've just lost track of where we are. Just remind me, if you could, did Councillor Brand move this as an amendment, or is it's an old motion?
This is an amendment to this.
So we're just going to vote on the amendment first, right?
Correct.
Thanks very much.
Councillor Baxter.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll speak in support of the amendment. I think that talking about using money efficiently rather than minimising it, I think is a much better way of explaining what we're actually trying to do here. Really, it's just about making sure that we're providing the best service and using our money wisely.
Okay, any further speakers?
I'll speak just to say...
yes, Councillor Gross.
Sorry. Just to talk generally about what these words mean and may mean, I think that it's basically it's a synonym. And just to remind everyone that there's been significant cutting of some of the aspects of the subsidy that we've given to this service, and yet and that's been to the efficiency of the service. So I think that it actually, as officers have advised, doesn't change the substance of the original motion, it just cloaks it in more positive language. So I support it.
Thank you. Any further speakers to this amendment? Councillor Brand,
you don't get a close.
Well, okay. Then I'll put that motion under division. Councillor Crawford. I know you're saying it. Can't actually hear you.
Sorry.
Saying 4. Okay. Councillor Gross.
4.
Councillor Pearl.
Against.
Councillor Simic.
4.
Councillor Voss. 4. Councillor Baxter.
4.
Councillor Bond.
4.
Councillor Brand.
4.
Councillor Copsey.
4.
That motion is carried, and that now forms the substantive motion. Would anyone else like to speak to the substantive motion? Well, Councillor Crawford, you have an amendment? Can't hear you, actually.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, my computer does not like to speak. Allow me my speech. It's in the same vein of making it a more positive recommendation and maybe taking Councillor Brand's amendment to 3.2 and making it a bit more elegant. The wording would be, no offence, David. David.
Councillor Brand, thank you.
Councillor Brand. It would be, if I could just read it out, I'll just find it in my other page. It would be, note that this finding will be reviewed annually to ensure that the ongoing operation of council-provided early education and care services continues to provide places for children whose families are experiencing factors associated with vulnerability, semicolon, that council's financial investment in its own centres is efficiently managed, semicolon, and that childcare service delivery continues to work effectively in the city.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Is that correct, what's on the screen there?
Yeah. To ensure the ongoing operation. Yep.
Yes. Thank you. Now, do we have a seconder? Councillor Baxter to second. Thank you. Councillor Crawford, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mayor. I think it's been a long journey to get to this point, and I think it's a high point that we've done the public interest report, and it affirms what our community has told us all along, that it is our council-run direct service of childcare is a very valued service and provides much to our community. So I just wanted to reword the recommendation to kind of reflect that. We're investing in the future of our children and investing in our community, because it's not just the children. These places are hubs for parents as well in our community. So they grow the community and we are investing back in it. So I think it's just a much more positive way to reflect the outcome that or the recommendation or the point that we've got to. So I would ask councillors to support it. I think it reflects Councillor Brand's previous amendment, and we're investing in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Councillor Baxter.
Sure, I'll be quick. I think this again is just a bit of a cleaning up of the intention of what we're going for here. It's clear that we are a part of childcare service delivery in the city of Port Phillip, and that we need to make sure that we're doing that well within that environment.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Gross, have you got a clarifying question?
Same old question. Is there any unforeseen consequences or effects from this? What seems to be just a language change to me.
Mr. Keenan?
Through you, Mayor, no, none that I can see, and I've just consulted via chat with Teresa, and Ms. Parsons says maybe not limited to childcare in the recommendation, but early childhood services, early education and care services. So that covers childcare and kindergarten.
So there's a suggestion there.
I'm happy to take that.
Just to, now from a governance perspective, does that change anything substantially here? Just need to get some advice on that. And then obviously we need the seconder to agree as well.
So the change, could I check, Mr. Keenan, where was it to be at that childcare and early education service delivery? Is that the suggestion?
And,
or where was it earlier?
No, where it says childcare service delivery on the starting on the third last line, that early education and care service delivery, just to be consistent.
Yeah, as previous, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's just saying the same thing, just in a more holistic way.
It's good by me.
Fine by the seconder, that's great. Governance, any concerns with that change midway through here?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, that's fine if the mover and seconder both confirm that they're happy with that amendment or that change, sorry.
Yes. They both did, thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Gross, for that clarifying question to get that in. Would anyone else like to speak? Is nobody in the chat there? I think there might.
Yes,
be.
I did. I put in a C into the chat there.
Oh yes, way back up there. Yes, Councillor Brand.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, look, I'll be supporting this. I think the difference between these two amendments is that the first one I think was really to I can't think of the right word. To iron out what I saw as a sort of a legal wording which was self-contradictory a bit, whereas this one I think is simply a better description of what we're doing. I don't think it changes anything really except just the tone, and certainly not the substance. And I'm very happy to. I think it's a much better description. I think in particular the acknowledgement that the so-called subsidy, which, well, it is technically it's a subsidy, that's what we will call it, but it is also to be seen as an investment that council makes in providing this service, which in turn provides such special care for the vulnerable children in our community. In particular, I think that's great, and I just want to thank the officers for not just for this little bit of help that we've had tonight, but it's been this sort of incredibly detailed help and negotiation and investigation, which has been going on for months and months and, well, years. It's been an amazing job that they've done, and we've come around through this little funneling of one part of the whole equation of what we were looking at in childcare through this public interest test, which they've taken on, and that's become a really important part of the jigsaw puzzle that we've now got organised, and I think we're doing really well with it, and I'm quite thrilled that it's turning out so perfectly.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. So there's nobody else that's requested to speak to this amendment. Then I'll put that amendment under division once again. First up, we've got Councillor Crawford.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Gross.
4.
Councillor Pearl.
Against.
Councillor Simic.
4.
Councillor Voss. 4. Councillor Baxter.
4.
Councillor Bond.
4.
Councillor Brand.
4.
Councillor Copsey.
4.
That amendment has been carried and now forms part of the substantive motion. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the substantive motion?
Yes.
Councillor Crawford.
I just wanted to speak to say a few thank yous and acknowledgements. This has been a very long road for officers, for our community, for councillors, and for staff. And I wanted to say thank you for all coming on this very long journey to this point, for all of your advocacy and for all of your efforts to show us the importance that the community places on council-provided childcare and early education more broadly in our community. I do want to clarify that this motion tonight is only specifically the public interest test referring to our council-run centres, and that the reason that community run, which are very highly valued in our community, are not mentioned tonight is because this is specifically around legislative, a report that we got done in our own delivery. So I just wanted to say this does not take away of any of our support that we are going to provide to community run centres, and they are highly valued, and we know how stressful it is at this time. So I just wanted to put that to it. But I also just wanted to say to all the advocates and to all the people who've put suggestions and be committed to this process, to the policy, to the advocacy, thank you for your patience, despite sometimes, I'm sure, a very frustrating process, or not sure, I know. But I just wanted to say, I'm really glad we got to this point. I think COVID has particularly impacted women more than anyone else, whether it be women working in childcare, the families that put their children into childcare, or the ability for women to go to work, or I think has become it's really obvious how important this service is to our society. And I think there's a bigger conversation on the other side of COVID to how we value that more in many ways. But I just wanted to say that I'm really glad that we as a council have come to this conclusion that that it is a valued service. I just wanted to assure you that we're really proud, and I'm really excited that we've got to this point, and I look forward to supporting childcare in its broad shape in this community. And I know it's going to be a rough road out of COVID, but we are here and we know the importance for our children, for our community, to keep providing this. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone involved and the officers for all the hard work.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Councillor Brand.
Yes, I want to thank Councillor Crawford for actually making that clarification about why we're just talking about council-run ones when the whole system is much bigger than that, with community ones and private ones. They're all valuable and they all do a really important job. But it's been a particular journey for the council provided childcare, and this is a sort of an end point in that journey. And it has been a long and tortuous one. And I just want to point out that how important I think it has been that we, in this Children's Services Review, particularly as it's applied to council's services, that we've gone through this long and tortuous process of actually asking questions that people didn't want asked, asking questions that people who probably didn't really want council to be in childcare would be asking, and they're questions that people resented being asked, and resented, I guess, council's commitment to actually accepting the questions and answering them. And I think by going through all of the steps rigorously and openly, it's actually got council, particularly council-run childcare, into a much stronger position of confidence in its own being, in its own value, and it's been confirmed on many more levels now, and embedded, I think, and protected by having gone through that sort of valorising process. And this is one of the last steps, probably the last step that this council is going to make in that process. And now we have a public interest test which has been examined thoroughly and rigorously, and it's come out. It could have been it could have come out the other way. It was scary to subject council services to a question like that, but it's come out well, and it's made the council provision of childcare so much more secure, so much more understood and valued, and also so much more subject to further rigorous testing along the same lines, which I think we can be very confident that we will withstand that testing because it's been done already. I think we're in a much better position, and I want to thank everybody on in every part of this process, including especially the officers, but for the community who have put in masses and masses of work, masses and masses of presentation, of writing, of thinking, of debating and arguing, of considering, certainly incredibly respectful and constructive discussions with me when I was sometimes arguing on the wrong side. It's been a fantastic process, and I really feel like this little part of it tonight is a special moment in that process, which I think everybody, all the councillors, well, except one, have come together on this, which is also a bit unprecedented over the last year, and I'm very, very happy to be thanking everybody for supporting this amendment, and here we are with it. Not amendment, this resolution, and here we are, I think, in a very good place for the future, and thank you everybody who's on board.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. Councillor Baxter.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, look, as some of the other councillors have said, this has been a process that's been going on for quite some time, and childcare is childcare in general, whether it's provided by council or not, is an incredibly important service in our municipality. But when we were having discussions around council provided childcare, there were obviously a number of different segments of the community that were arguing different for different things. Some, and I think this is a very, very small part that we're arguing for us to sort of get out of it or privatise it, or various different sort of versions of that. And some people were saying how we could do things better, which is entirely fair enough criticism, I think, because I'm sure we can always improve. But the vast majority of the community that got involved in this conversation, they just made it really clear that the community values council-provided childcare, and that they want us to be in it, and they want us to provide it as efficiently as possible, but they want us to be in it because they see the value that it provides to our community, and that was just overwhelming from our community, that sort of feedback. So I do want to thank, as others have, the people that have participated in that process. As a user of childcare myself, I know the value, and at the moment it's very hard not having my daughter in childcare/kinder, but we're now getting to a much better place, I think. I did just want to also give a shout out to my fellow councillors, probably in particular Councillor Crawford, who I've had lots and lots of conversations with about this issue, and also Councillor Brand, who I've had conversations with, but really all of the councillors for engaging in this process in a really in a way that shows that they were committed to getting the best outcome, despite the fact that some councillors will come from sort of different ideological backgrounds on how they see this. But I'll just finish up by saying that obviously one of the biggest things that council can do by being in this space is to address things like market failure, and we're seeing that right now. Not necessarily a market failure, but a huge risk of a market failure, that with childcare in a really tricky spot at the moment due to COVID, and this is one of the reasons why that we're in this, so that we can continue to make sure that vulnerable kids and other kids that need it get that support. So that's probably it from me. Sorry for speaking so long.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Councillor Copsey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, we're sounding a bit like a broken record, but I understand councillors' desire to speak to this because, as Councillor Crawford pointed out. I think, Councillor Crawford, you said everything that I was going to. So I'll be quick. Our community engaged with this issue with such a level of passion, but also genuine commitment to conversation and really high quality. I was really struck as we went through all of the engagement processes that we have been through in the Childcare Services Review right from the beginning, at the depth of engagement, the level of detail, and the willingness to participate in a really genuine conversation around this issue. Thank you very much to everybody who has participated in the process so far. Thank you very much to officers for a similarly rigorous engagement with this issue and a real commitment to understanding our community's perspectives and making sure that we reach a position that reflects our values as a council and our values as a community. It's quite interesting timing, really, that we're getting to this point with this report during a period when, of course, the importance of early childhood education has been really highlighted, as other councillors have observed. And I'm very, very pleased that we're at the point now this evening of acknowledging the huge value of childcare generally, but importantly of council's role in providing high quality childcare and early child education. It's a real vindication of the process and everybody's long-term dedication to getting through and making sure that we had a really well thought through outcome. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Copsey. I'll also speak to this item as I reserved my right earlier on, and just want to thank the officers for their work in finally delivering the evidence that we needed for this public interest information. It's been critical. But, you know, I think first of all, who would have thought only a few years ago that the world would be in this pandemic state? It just goes to show that services like these basics are very important for council to operate. I'm the first to admit that I thought the industry could withhold shocks. I thought it was mature, and I thought with some help and incentive could focus and help those that need it most. It seems for many in the community and also in private centres that this could possibly be the last thing on their minds, with simple survival being where the conversations are at in many centres outside council. So it follows that council needs to do what it does best for the community, and that is to be the safety net, to be reliable, to be dependable, to be stable and available. And so that's where we're finding ourselves here tonight. And I just want to say thank you to the officers for the significant work to focus on efficiency and for making sure that we're running a service for our community that all ratepayers can be proud of. Thank you. Councillor Gross, would you like to close?
Look, I will say a few words in closing. Am I on? I am on. This debate has involved us in a consideration of multiple and often contradictory policy outcomes in a very complicated legislative environment. It's an environment that's subject to federal funding and legislative interventions and also state government interventions. So that makes it bloody difficult to get one's head around all of it. Some of those legislative and policy interventions are about quality. Some of them are about competition. And I think that they're contradictory because they mean that we have to balance the policy seesaw is very, very difficult. Part of the issue for us was the competition issue, and if we have a look at attachment A, the competitive neutrality documentation, we can see that there's been huge changes in the way we have provided financial support for this service. Once again, as Councillor Crawford said, I'm only talking about the council-run service. So, you know, in 17, 18, I haven't got the figures in front of me, but I think it was a $1.5 million subsidy. And in this year, it's a $200,000 subsidy. A $1.54 million in 17, 18, and the budget proposes in 2021 that it will be much, much less. So that's a huge revolutionary change in the way this service is being provided. What that means is that the monkey is off our back. The competitive neutrality monkey is off our back. And secondly, and sort of very important to me, is that we are now focusing our energy on vulnerable families. And when we started this conversation, we didn't know much, as we know now, about how we provide services to our vulnerable families. All we knew was that just on the figures, we were not doing, not reaching out to enough. And there are really exciting ideas about advocacy on behalf of these vulnerable families that, you know, I'm really proud of. I think this has been a really good result for this part of children services generally throughout Port Phillip. But many issues remain. There are challenges in our accommodation and buildings, and there are challenges in the current funding of in the COVID-19 pandemic. The federal government's response was to that we have to accept 50% of fee income for the balance of the 2020 financial year, despite not being eligible for JobKeeper. And I think that's might be seen as a political partisan comment, but it's very important because that means $700,000 just walks out our door. And so this is a conversation that will never end, because as soon as we make a decision, something new will happen, the figures will change, the failure for local government to get JobKeeper wage subsidy is really dramatic for our bottom line, and we'll have to talk about it again reasonably soon. So well done to everyone. It's been a difficult and complicated debate, and I'm glad that this stage of the conversation is now completed satisfactorily. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gross. So we'll put that motion under division, and I'll call upon each councillor's name for the vote. First up, Councillor Crawford.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, thank goodness, because I'm very happily saying 4.
Councillor Gross.
4.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Simic.
4.
Councillor Voss. 4. Councillor Baxter.
4.
Councillor Bond.
4.
Councillor Brand.
4.
Councillor Copsey.
4.
That motion is unanimously carried. Well done.
Well done, everyone.
So now, given the time, it's 9:40. We're going to break, just have a comfort break, just 10 minutes, please. So 9:50, please be back and we'll start promptly. Well, welcome back, everyone. So we'll continue with the agenda. We've got a few items left. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items left, 8 items. So 11.1, recycling reset and the commencement of transition planning for new waste and recycling services. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers on this one?
Yeah.
Yep, I have. Councillor Gross, go.
So I suppose my question for the officers is that this $50,000 is to do a study into the various trials that we're running. I suppose my question is, there's been a great reaching out for innovation with not just in Port Phillip but everywhere, with looking at new ways to collect recyclables. I sort of remain a bit of a sceptic because at the Laverton plant, the sorting technology is now so sophisticated, it's probably better just to still keep with the yellow bin. What's your view on that, or is it still too early to say?
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, so councillors will be aware that earlier this year, in February, that council resolved for the City of Port Phillip to partake in the advanced waste processing collaborative procurement activities that are being run by the Metro Waste Group. Council is, despite the pandemic has changed some of the timelines around that project, but the report contains an update on the progress towards procuring advanced waste processing services for the North West group of councils. So that probably speaks to some of the opportunities that are going to be there with advanced technologies to be able to sort recycling better once it's all reaches the processing sites. I might ask Council's Coordinator of Waste Futures, Donna Shield, to provide an update on some of the other innovations that Council's currently working on through the Don't Waste It program.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. So the $50,000, Councillor Gross, has been allocated currently to do a study on multi-unit developments and best practice there. However, over the past sort of 6 to 8 months, council officers have been doing a lot of work in that space, working with Monash and Melbourne University on looking at different ways and innovations that we might use through our transition planning process to make recycling more accessible and easier in multi-unit developments especially. And then in regards to the yellow bin and sorting innovation, which you mentioned as well, the state government are quite clear that all Victorians will have access to 4 different services, so a general waste stream, a commingled recycling, a glass stream and a FOGO stream. And I guess the innovation opportunity is for us to decide how we deliver those services to best meet the needs of our community.
Thank you. Michelle, I've got a follow-up question that you sort of started to touch on there in relation to our current trials that we're doing, in particular the glass trial. You know, we've had significant success with the communal trial of the bins in certain parks in terms of contamination rates. How does that fit in to the scheme going forward? If that's what the community prefer, if that's what works best, is that an option going forward?
Through you, Mayor. Yeah, it definitely is. So the Victorian government, through their circular economy policy, haven't prescribed how the services are delivered, just that we offer 4 services. So yes, this could look like a communal glass recycling service, or it could look like a 4-bin system. So that's, I guess, the importance of us delivering the trials that we're delivering at the moment, so we can gather data and information on what our community respond to and prefer, and what works best for our diverse mix of housing types as well.
Thank you. Another further question from me, and then we'll go back to Councillor Gross. I didn't see in the report that you're going to allow produce stickers for bins. It's something that I hear a lot from the community in terms of what can go in the recycling bin. Just wondering is that part of the digital assets or the comms that you'll be producing?
Through you, Mayor. At this stage, stickers aren't part of the first round of the proposed recycling reset program, mainly because it's such a dynamic industry at the moment, and we don't really want to do too much printing if we can avoid it in case things change again. So we're a little bit hesitant to print bin stickers, for example, for all of our community, knowing that potentially something might change in the next sort of 6 to 8 months. So we plan to rely heavily on our digital media and our website communications to deliver the messages, and invite our residents to head to the website for up-to-date information.
Thank you, Ms. Shields. Councillor Gross.
Okay. Michelle, I'm sort of really focused on the AWP stuff, and I note that we're part of the Northwest, and the Northwest has been delayed, and I've always been sympathetic to going in the Southeast because they're logistically so much closer. Is it looking like the southeastern one? Not only is it in front of the northwestern one, but is it looking like it could be a goer for us because the logistic costs would be far smaller than the cost of schlepping it out to Laverton or wherever it ends up being?
Through you, Mayor, I might answer that question. Councillor Gross, as you correctly point out, one of the biggest considerations that we have in processing material is the haulage cost. It's one of our largest cost bases, apart from the landfill levy that we pay on material going to landfill. As you correctly pointed out, the Southeast collaborative procurement process for advanced waste processing is ahead of the Northwest program. The driver behind that is that there's a significant shortage of landfill opportunities in the Southeast. So that's sort of forcing the Southeast process to proceed a bit quicker. The advantage of the Northwest process that we are party to is that we obviously can learn from the experience of the Southeast group of councils in the process that they're going through. This is a very complicated procurement process to work out what technology would work for such groups of councils, sites that are applicable for different councils, to take into account exactly what you're speaking about, the haulage considerations. Whilst the City of Port Phillip is officially part of the Northwest collaborative procurement process, there remains the opportunity for Port Phillip in the future, if council chose to do so, to contract or enter into some sort of arrangement with the Southeast councils or the service provider that provides services to the Southeast councils, if that was deemed to be appropriate. But ultimately, it's going to depend upon what technologies are implemented, the siting of the different advanced waste processing plants, and what materials and services that those plants can actually provide. So a very long way, a long answer to basically say the opportunity is there for council to be able to engage in the Southeast process, but at this stage, we're not party to the collaborative procurement process.
Thank you, Mr.
Great. So just, if I may, Madam Mayor, just make the observation that this is going to be a very long-term contract. It's going to be a very expensive contract. It could be absolutely huge for us financially. And I just want to know, is there a process for perhaps a joint officer councillor Supreme Soviet just to get some conversation going on about this contract so that the knowledge is dispersed around both councillors and
Councillor Gross
and officers? Is there a process?
Excuse me, Councillor Gross. Councillor Copsey has called a point of order. Councillor Copsey, what is your point of order?
I was just wondering if the councillor could either come to the question or speak to, this report, the issues dealt with in this report.
That's
Thank you, Councillor Gross. I think you could restrict your
I finished my
questions
question,
to-
but, clearly that's a redundant observation because this is absolutely on point in this report. And the question is, what is the process for getting councillors and officers jointly involved in this conversation about this huge contract? In what way is that not on point?
Thank you, Councillor. We'll allow that question.
Through you, Mayor, Councillor Gross would be aware that officers are having regular engagement through the Metro Waste Group with the Northwest Collaborative Procurement process. Officers are more than able to provide an update to councillors at an opportune time on how that process is proceeding. As the report does stipulate, there have been some delays. Like many things, the collaborative procurement process for the Northwest has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. But at the opportune time, we can provide an update to councillors on how that collaborative procurement process is proceeding.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any further questions, councillors? If not, we've got a officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for that or something different? Councillor Copsey to move. Do I have a seconder?
Yep. Yes. Gross.
Okay. Councillor Gross. Okay, I'll allow this. Can you please use the chat, please?
Yeah.
Councillor Gross to second. Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'll reserve, thank you.
Councillor Gross, would you like to speak?
Look, I've tried to tease out with my questions the big issues. This is a huge contract that we're talking about in the AWP field and in the recycling field. I think we've got some issues because the state is mandating that we have 4 streams of recyclables, and with our small property sizes, with our trials that we're running now, with our desperate desire to lower haulage costs by not having 4 trucks running around the community but having less than 4, I think we've got some really interesting but really quite difficult issues to deal with. I think the state's approach is incredibly rigid, given it's such a dynamic and changing field. So I suppose I think this is a good recommendation. The only thing I warn all of us is, A, councillors and officers have to be engaged. At the moment, councillors really haven't been as engaged as we might have been for the past 6 months. There are reasons why, but secondly, I think that we have to look at the trade-off between being second cab off the rank, and with technology you always want to be second cab off the rank, or for the next 20 years schlepping our waste out to the northwestern extremes of Melbourne, which would be incredibly expensive. And the final thing is to say, I reckon it's good that we're now getting along and having these conversations, and I really think it's a good place for us to spend our time and debate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gross. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I'll also just briefly say to thank the officers for bringing it to our attention that we need to submit a draft transition plan and how that's going to work, and also the recycling reset I think is something that's really needed. Our community has been crying out for it, and so it'll be good, I think, and look forward to seeing the results from that. And as Councillor Gross has pointed out, noting the delays in the development of the business case around the Northwest advanced waste processing. So some good progress, albeit in an interesting time on our waste. Councillor Copsey, would you like to close?
Thank you. Thanks to the officer for bringing this report. It's some welcome progress. Before the COVID crisis, we had the recycling crisis. It's been amazing to see how many really big disruptive issues have impacted some of our services during this term. And so it's very welcome to be seeing some progress towards actual implementation of those state recycling reforms. It's very welcome change for Victoria. We need to see a big change in this, and I'm really pleased that we're also proceeding with the trials that Council had identified, because as is observed in the report, we do have some unique challenges in our city. I'm very excited to see the thinking that comes out of the investigation into MUDs. It's been a long, really prickly question and a dilemma for us for a long time. So I hope that that's a place in which this council can see a really great return on that investment. I've got great faith in officers' efforts, and hopefully we'll have some learnings that will be very valuable to share with other councils across the state at the end of that process. It will be exciting to see the waste bins with the mandated colours, because I know that's another issue that's vexed this industry for a long time. So thanks very much for bringing the report, and all the best with the implementation.
Thank you, Councillor Copsey. I'm now going to put that under division and call upon each councillor for their vote. First up is Councillor Gross.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Simic.
For.
Councillor Voss. For. Councillor Baxter.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Brand.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford.
For.
That motion is unanimously carried. Well done. 13.1, Boonatung, Ngargee, Yulenj, First Peoples Arts Advisory Panel appointments. Councillors, we have a officer's recommendation, and I require a mover, please, unless you have any questions. Has anyone got any questions first? There are none. So I require a mover. Councillor Crawford, to move, I need the names of the people, please.
Yes. Is that fine with the slightly different wording? Can you see that?
On the screen?
Oh, this is the actual rec. Thank you. This is the adjusted one. Right. Okay, so the names. Let me just go to my email. So the names of the people who will be... do you want them now?
Yes, please.
Yes. So I apologise if I'm not correct with any pronunciations. Sermsa bin Saad, Amina Jara Briggs, Marley Holloway Clark, John Wayne Parsons, Ruth Croat, Jasmine McNeil, and Bo Savronis.
Terrific. Okay, and I note there's some other things there in red. Just check. There's a couple of additions there to 3.2, just changes. So that's the officer's recommendation.
Yes,
is that part of it? Okay, great. Now, do I have a seconder?
Yes.
Councillor Copsey to second. Oh, you just missed out. Councillor Copsey. Okay, Councillor Crawford, would you like to speak to this motion?
Yeah, I think this is a really exciting board to be appointing, advisory panel, sorry, not the board. It's a great thing. City of Port Phillip has always worked closely, or for a long time has worked closely with First Peoples in our neighbourhood, the Boonatung, and I think this is really exciting that we're bringing them their special expertise and understanding in an artistic sense. We already have the festival, and I just think it's going to be amazing what the outcomes may be. So I'm just really excited that we're starting this off, and I look forward to see what comes or what advice we get from it.
Thank you. Councillor Copsey.
Thank you. Yes. Culture enriches our community so greatly, and I very much look forward to the engagement with the advisory panel into the future. It's great to see this progressing. Thank you, officers, for the work in progressing this, and congratulations to the appointees.
Thank you. Councillor Gross, did you want to speak to this?
No.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? Then I'll put this item again under division. First up, Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Simic.
4.
Councillor Voss. 4. Councillor Baxter.
4.
Councillor Bond.
4.
Councillor Brand.
4.
Councillor Copsey.
4.
Councillor Crawford. Say one more time. Councillor Crawford. I apologise. 4. Councillor Gross.
4.
Thank you. That motion is unanimously carried. 13.2, Port Melbourne Special Rate Renewal from 2021 to 2026, the intention to declare. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers on this item? If not, there is an officers alt rec. Do I have a mover for that or something different? I'm happy to move. Oh, Councillor Copsey to move. I'm happy to second. Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to the motion?
Fine, thanks, Madam Mayor.
No. I don't need to speak to the motion. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Then I'll put that motion. All those in favour, again under division. Councillor Simic.
4.
Councillor Voss. 4. Councillor Baxter.
4.
Councillor Bond.
4.
Councillor Brand.
4.
Councillor Copsey.
4.
Councillor Crawford.
4.
Councillor Gross.
4.
Councillor Pearl.
4.
That motion is unanimously carried. 14.1, which is the Assemblies of Councillors. Councillors, are there any questions of the officers of this report? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for this or something different? Councillor hang on. Councillor Gross to move, is that correct? Yes.
Correct.
Councillor Pearl to second. Councillor Gross, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Councillor Pearl, would you like to speak to the motion? Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Then I'll put that motion. All those in favour, again under division. Councillor Voss, 4. Councillor Baxter.
4.
Councillor Bond.
4.
Councillor Brand.
4.
Councillor Copsey.
4.
Councillor Crawford.
4.
Councillor Gross.
4.
Councillor Pearl.
4.
Councillor Simic.
4.
That motion is unanimously carried. 14.2, Annual Review of the Audit and Risk Committee. Charter and the outcomes of the Audit and Risk Committee meetings. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers on this report? No questions. So we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for this or something different? Councillor Gross to move, Councillor Pearl to second. Councillor Gross.
It's a dynamic duo. I don't wish to speak to this.
Councillor Pearl, would you like to speak to the motion?
We have to thank Councillor Voss and Councillor Gross, who are the two heavy-hitting councillors that sit on the Audit and Risk Committee, as well as the other members of it. But this is an extraordinarily important committee for a number of reasons, and we have two of our finest councillors that sit on it to represent us on it, and we appreciate their service. I think I've said that every year for the past 4. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearl. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I will also speak. So the reason why this has come to us primarily is because we've got a new Local Government Act and that the Audit and Risk Committee charter is reviewed annually. And this year there have been a few minor improvements, mainly in relation to the Local Government Act, because it was really extensively changed last year. Also, this report importantly informs the Council and the community that the Audit and Risk Committee met more than usual in the last few months, primarily due to an update on COVID, and also we had to meet out a session around council expenses and support policy, as well as determining the terms for an audit of past councillor expenses and allowances, as well as freedom of information. So we've been pretty busy. So the Audit and Risk Committee really needed to satisfy themselves that the processes are exactly operating as expected, or if improvements are needed or other actions as appropriate. So a couple of things that the committee discussed, just to be clear, from the following audits. So that we looked at the grants management, we looked at the events and festivals, we looked at privacy compliance, and we also noted some of the other reports, such as the status of the internal audit plan, draft payroll and coding controls audit scope, the draft internal audit plan, I already said that, for 2021, and also the updated audit universe. So, you know, they're not small things. They're quite detailed and require a lot of oversight and thinking around those sort of things. So I just wanted to say thanks to the officers that do all the work that we get to have look at and to ask really difficult and probing questions on. So thank you. Just going back, Councillor Pearl. Councillor Gross, would you like to close?
No, thank you.
Then I'll put that motion again under division. First up, Councillor Voss. Sorry, Councillor Baxter, I should say, is first.
4.
Councillor Bond.
4.
Councillor Brand.
4.
Councillor Copsey.
4.
Councillor Crawford.
4.
Councillor Cross.
4.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Simic.
4.
Councillor Voss. 4. That motion is unanimously carried. Item 14.3 is the status of council decisions and questions taken on notice recorded by council from the 1st of April to the 30th of June. Councillors, do we have any questions of the officers in relation to this? I note there are none. Do I have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Copsey to move and Councillor Crawford to second. Thank you. Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to thank the officers for the diligence in compiling this. Once again, similar to the CEO report, a really thorough document for not only councillors but the public to see what has been happening and the actions that have been taken. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Copsey. Councillor Crawford?
No.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? No, then I'll put that motion again under division. Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Brand.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford.
For.
Councillor Gross.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
In favour.
Councillor Simic.
For.
Councillor Voss. For. Councillor Baxter.
For.
That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. And the big one, 14.4, Council Plan and Budget Hearing of Submissions. So we heard a lot from the community about this tonight. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers in relation to anything that we heard tonight? Okay, so we have an officers alt rec. Just a couple of changes there. Rather than hears from, it just says thanks, because we've already heard from them. Do I have a mover for that or something different? Okay, Councillor Simic to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brand to second. Oh, sorry. Yep, there's a bit of... Okay, Councillor Simic, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I thought it was my turn to move something tonight as well. Right at the end, I get an opportunity as well. So really, tonight was an opportunity to hear some of the submissions. The budget processes we've talked about previously has been quite a long one under quite difficult circumstances. We're in a particularly precarious position given the crisis that's happening globally and all around us. Nonetheless, Port Phillip continues to be under good financial management, and the budget still continues to progress a lot of the projects that are important to our community in the city of Port Phillip. So thank you to everyone who's participated in this process to date, and thank you also to the officers for their incredible documentation and oversight over this process. Indeed, one of the most important processes that we go through as a council, and it will be the last one, I think, for this council. So yeah, it's a good one to end on. Thank you.
Muted. No? I can't hear anybody.
Yeah, the Mayor is muted.
Oh, Councillor Brand?
Thank you very much. Yes, I just want to thank everybody who did present tonight. The budget is an absolutely gigantic document and a gigantic undertaking, and I am just absolutely in awe of the work that goes into it, and the amount of officer time is just huge. The amount of reading time that we put into it is large, and the amount of effort that the community has put into this, 297 submissions, almost all of them really well thought out, really strong arguments, impossible to accommodate everyone. But we are going to be looking at those in the next week. Well, we'll be looking at them already pretty thoroughly, and look, we'll do our best. But it is a huge task, and it's a very, very impressive turnout tonight. Thank you very much, everybody that submitted, and we will do our best for you. Bye.
Thanks very much, Councillor Brand. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Pearl?
Thanks very much. Tonight's submissions show the tip of the iceberg of the pain that many in our community are going through at the moment and where our focus needs to be. One thing I would say, though, is that we need to be flexible with our budget situation, and it's encouraging to see through the information provided in the CEO report over the past 2 months that Council's budget position has substantially improved from our original prediction. That's not true for the vast majority of businesses in our municipality and households in our municipality. And none of us predicted 3 weeks ago, let alone 2 months ago when we were working through this process, that we would be back in a stage 4 lockdown based on what's been happening to this extreme, and the extreme effect it's going to have on our local economy and the balance sheets of our local households. And that needs to be our focus moving forward. And the budget needs to be fluid. We have to, I suspect we're going to have to make changes to ensure that the council repositions itself, to ensure that we're focused on local jobs, good quality local jobs, ensuring our financial position is shored up, and that we're providing the best value services and the most assistance we possibly can to households, particularly middle income households who are suffering deeply in Elwood in particular, and Albert Park, Middle Park and St Kilda. All the evidence has indicated that those areas are feeling this huge economic pinch the most, and they'll need our leadership in months to come. So this budget needs to be fluid, and we need to listen to the people that are talking to us. Much more diverse group this year than any group I've seen it. So thank you to Mr. Carroll and your team for the work you've put into it. You've done a sterling job and we appreciate it. But the complexity and fluidity of this situation is like nothing we have never seen before. And many people think that they know what's happening and think that they can predict what's going to happen in the future. And that's completely wrong. We have no game plan, no playbook for this situation. And we need to be very, very careful and purposeful in our decision making.
Thank you, Councillor Pearl. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Simic, would you like to close? Then I'll put that motion under division and call upon your vote. Individually, Councillor Brand.
For.
Councillor Copsey.
For.
Councillor Crawford.
For.
Councillor Gross.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
Favour.
Councillor Simic.
For.
Councillor Voss. For. Councillor Baxter.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
That motion is unanimously carried. Item 15, notices of motion, and councillors, we don't have any notices of motion tonight. Item 16 is reports by councillor delegates. Councillors, do we have any reports? Maybe it's a bit late tonight. Okay, we'll keep moving. Item 17, urgent business. Councillors, do we have any items of urgent business? There is none. Item 18 is confidential matters. Councillors, we have no confidential items tonight, so there being no further business, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you and good night.